Hey, there we go. Now try something.
Hello?
Aha, there we go. Thanks, Jaro. Yeah.
There we go.
I had switched my
Of course,
uh,
Jaro would save the day.
Jaro would save the technical day of that sort of thing. I switched which GPU I was using for my second monitor, which is like capturing you,
Mhm.
and that OBS didn't like that, and it switched all of my settings. So
Oh,
cool.
God.
Now people can hear you. But yeah,
Good.
we started by you hired me and you gave me a job, and now we both don't work at that place that we were hired at,
Yeah.
which is funny.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did I hire you?
It was
2018?
2018, like July. Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember the first day you started, you were wearing the green sweater with the green glasses. And you said that Maddie had picked out your first day outfit for you.
She did. There was also like the JKR photo. That's where we worked. Was a ad agency, and
Mhm.
my first day I also got like my company photo. So it was even weird because I was like way more dressed up than I normally would start a job at,
Yeah.
just because I was getting my photo taken. But yeah, we both worked there. That's almost 2 years ago now, a little over.
Yeah. I know this
It's-
is the thing with all these agencies. You never really know because, like, a lot of people sometimes will dress up, and other people just wear a ball cap and a t-shirt to work, which
yeah,
is my preference. I don't know.
yeah, and it's like seems that like some places the higher you are, like more dressed down you are, and that's
Yeah,
like
I
how you
know.
know it's like that person's like very casual and they're like the CEO or something of that place.
Grunge chic.
Yeah, and I mean it was cool because our team was like super tiny. I mean
Hmm.
before I was there, like you were the only other like real motion designer, and that's like what I got brought on to do. And then we had like a little tiny team there, um, and we did like a bunch of stuff for like a very long time. And then I left to go freelance after like a year and a bit. And then like how long after that? You were only there for like a couple months, right? And then you
Yeah, because
left.
I think you left right after your wedding.
Yeah, so that was like would have been July. So it was like almost at my 1 year
Hmm.
mark in
Yeah,
2019.
and I think I had left the December.
Okay, so yeah, it was like
Yeah.
6 months after that. And now you work at another ad agency
Hmm.
doing sort of the similar stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I am I am enjoying it.
Yeah. So like I left to do freelance because I wanted to work on more long form. Because I mean the place we were at, and like I mean I think kind of ad agencies in general are kind of like you do a ton of really quick turnaround stuff, which means that you work on some cool stuff, but then like some things that you just like cannot
Hmm.
invest more than like 2 days in the turnaround of something,
Yeah.
which is like great because you're never working on something for like too long, but at the same time you're like I wish we could have a better schedule. They're like, well, it's going out in 2 days, so figure
Hmm.
out whatever the best viable thing we can do by then is. And then you're like, oh, okay. And so you're just like speed round doing all this work, and
Yeah, and
it's
it also it kind of messes up your workflow a bit because it
yeah.
is you're doing things for the benefit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So like with Liquid Sims, I'll just go straight into Blender because it's just like it's quick, it's out of the box. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, honestly, there are moments where I'm like, shit, I just want to use Houdini right
Yeah.
now. But it's such a tight timeline that you kind of have to be nimble. And I think
Mm-hmm.
for that benefit, I think you and I definitely have gotten a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Working fast, nimble, smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, when I joined our old agency that we were both at, it was like kind of, they were like, oh, you can do like Houdini stuff. And then, like, a lot of the times it was just like, well, can I? Because it's going to take like a little bit of like, it was always
Hmm.
convincing them that like the upfront work for something was like worth it or not worth it. And so that was always like the battle. It's like, well, yeah, like Blender would be like a couple hours you can get like a 70% good thing going, where it's like,
Hmm.
well, are we gonna then like add all these other things to this that like makes sense to maybe we bring it into Houdini and like actually like do it for
Yeah.
real. And that was kind of my thing. I always felt like we were doing like the fast thing, which was great because like I like problem solving, but at the end of the day I'm like, I would like just something where like you get to like plan out like your workflow and you're like, what are we gonna do for this one? Oh, cool.
Hmm.
We'll get like a pro in for like sculpting versus us like hodgepodging it into this like amalgamation of something that can kind of like get out the door, and like if you don't like look at it too closely, it kind of gets
Hmm.
by. But then I feel like in some things we had like a ton of time to like really, like I know like condensation was something we did for a couple things, and like because we knew we were going to revisit it so much, we kind of like spent more time into like, whereas like a lot of jobs I feel like people would be like, just get like whatever you can, because like it's not going to be that big of a selling point. But when we're selling beer, it is like a big thing for us to figure out.
Exactly. Yeah, and especially with like condensation, all that kind of stuff that we were trying to figure out, and like working with a new way. I think everybody always wants condensation out of the box. And I think when you're telling other people about condensation, I don't know, it's just that is the one thing that no one's been able to crack. I don't know if you've cracked it yet.
No.
Just good looking condensation that moves.
It's also hard because you think you've cracked it, and then you like retake a look at it, and you're like, oh, I don't like a lot of what's happening here.
Yeah.
And it's also like the different, like there's like levels. I feel like we have pretty much come really close to cracking like still non-moving condensation like on a bottle, but then like it all breaks when you're like, but then we want like one to trickle down. It's like, oh, well, that's a whole new setup, because like that like leaves like a streak behind or actual little droplets, and it's like that, and
it grabs the other ones as it goes.
Yeah, that was always like the biggest thing where I was like, we can get a decent still out, but animating it is like the hardest thing. And like I haven't found anything like X particles doesn't work great. It's just so hard to do those micro sims, because it's like it takes a ton of particle counts. And it just it's a pain, and like cheating it looks like okay, but it's just not as fun.
Yeah,
build it in a shader, says Jaro. I mean, shader works, I guess, but then it's not truly like you can't really like animate it in any way. You kind of have to like pick the way and hope that the art director never changes it. Yeah, but then like after that I went like freelance, and it's been kind of happenstance that I think like my first job I worked on one project for like 6 months, and then the next job I like worked like on a bunch of different stuff for like a couple months, and then this next thing I've worked on it for like another 5 months on one single project. And that was kind of like what I was hoping for, was things where you could be like be on the ground floor, help build something up, and then be like use your skills to like craft like multiple scenes in like a longer narrative thing. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. And that's where it's like it's not on the agency, because like why do they need to make longer than like 30-second spots? Like that doesn't make any sense. That's not what an ad agency does. They hire people to do that. And that was kind of like, I think both of our frustrations a little bit was like we were told like, well, maybe you could like manage this agency or this like studio and like tell them kind of like what we should be using that studio for, and they can do the long form content. We're both like, well, we would like to do long form content or like be on those projects.
And it completely voids, I think, our skill set, because it's almost kind of like making it as we're dispensable for this one project. And you can kind of send it out, give other people direction. But I mean, when you go in full time in a house, you expect them to want you and to pull it from your work. And I think that there is a different, there is the blurred line between, okay, you're doing this, you're making the storyboard, you're building the copy, and then you're giving it to another place as, and then you have the in-house thing. I think I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out, too, of how to explain the difference between those and why doing everything in-house is more fruitful.
Right. If you can build a solid team of in-house people that like know, because always the best benefit, and I think it's being bridged right now by like permalance people like myself who like stay at an agency as a freelancer for like multiple like 6 months, and like it's essentially like you're full-time, but at any point I guess they could disappear as like a contractor, whereas like that's like the biggest advantage is like you get to know workflows, like you're comfortable with like the people. And I think that's a huge thing that agencies don't take care of like freelancers as well, because they kind of like people would be in for like 2 weeks and then gone, and it's like it's not like worth like building out like how to work with them. Whereas like it's also an issue is that full-time people kind of get like brushed aside, like, oh, we'll just get like a freelancer into that, and you go keep working on our weird internal thing that you don't want to be working on. It's like because you, I mean, at the end of the day you don't cost as much, so they put you on things that don't really pay, which are the not fun things a lot of the time. Is what I found, at least, as a lot of like staff people have kind of reiterated. It's like you're staff and you like have to do like freelance project cleanup, like when they're not there and they're not going to book them again, you just get to like go into all those files and figure it out, which is kind of the nice part of being freelance, as I found. Is like at the end of the day, like I know if I want to leave a project that's like going downhill, I can just be like, that's the end of my booking, sorry, I'm done, I'm out. And then like you kind of just drop it, whereas you're full-time, you're just like, it's kind of seems hopeless if something's going bad. You're just like, I just hope this project like goes away at some point, but it never seemed to really go away.
And then it does, and then something else picks up.
And you're like, is this better? I don't know. It feels better, but it's just different than what we were working on. I think that we haven't really mentioned, I mean, like you do motion design, but like what would you say, like just, I mean, you're like a little bit like direction, a little bit like storyboard, a little bit of an illustrator. I mean, just kind of
I think from the beginning, my trajectory was kind of all over the place because I went to Virginia Tech and I was in their School of Visual Arts, and it was a fairly new program. So not to say they didn't know what they were doing, but they wanted to put everybody in everything. So like I would have a graphic design class in the morning, I would go to studio, and then I would code at night.
Right.
So then they switched it up, and then they put you in other things. So like my discipline was always paint. I was always like really big into oil painting and acrylic painting, and that. When I got to college, I was starting to lean more towards the 3D. So then I did a lot of that and 3D storytelling. And from that nugget, I kind of grabbed onto storytelling. So in a way, it's less about, like, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into being like, well, I'm just, I'm an illustrator, or I'm a designer, 3D artist. It was more of like, I just wanted to storytell. And depending on what that required, like, then I got into illustration more because it was like, okay, so this one requires illustration, not 3D, but a little bit of motion.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know. Long story short, maybe just like a generalist. I don't know. I like messing around with different things. Like even in quarantine, I was messing with Unreal Engine just to try to figure out different ways of doing things. Right. Because I think, in this space, it's about finding new things, new ways of working. And what I like about having all these free tools is that it's narrowing the gap between good people and how much money you have.
Yeah.
That now, like all these, like you can happily use Blender 24/7 as your only tool, and even with Photoshop and GIMP and all this other stuff.
Right.
It is nice that there are ways that people can make art without having to spend money. Yeah. And I think that is bringing out a whole new class of talent.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it is moving more in that direction, and the only people that are like Jaro agrees, the only people that are like really pigeonholed are people like myself who use these in like studio environments that kind of tell you that those aren't what you can use. Like I would gladly switch to like open source Blender and all of that stuff and like do all my stuff in like Unreal and like use more real-time stuff. But like at the end of the day, that means like I'm now doubling. Like I have to now like for work use Cinema because that's like my industry standard thing that like everyone uses, or like Maya for some people. And then like on the side you can use Blender, and I'm like, oh, that's like so much. I don't have enough brain to like be able to do all that. I wish that you could we could get to a more like decentralized 3D thing where it's like you just use a 3D package software and then we save to like a USD and then everyone can use it, and now that is anything's industry standard as long as you can like export to XYZ's kind of like this format. Then like we could break down. I think that's like the last step, is that like everyone's kind of hesitant because they're like, you still have to use After Effects for like your daily driver at work for most places. And I mean, it's just like such a pain to like, if you're so big, to move your whole workflow over like to whatever the newest thing is that's not like totally battle tested to know if like it will stick around for like long enough. I mean, Blender seems to have like really weathered the times. They're like 10 years old or something right now, so that
and it's just
definitely good.
And it's just a great team of people who want to do good. I mean, but I'm guilty about that whole like the 3D hierarchy thing.
Yeah,
like my very first job in the city, it was one of those like I came in, they had no motion experience, they wanted me to start something, so I was like, what's our budget? And their budget wasn't as big as the places that I've gone to after. So it was almost like I had to prove a little bit, and then I could get Cinema 4D. So I did Blender for a while, And I was kind of like, I was into it and I was ready to go. But then it like, I think my personal stigma was like, oh, I should probably switch over to something like Maya um, or Cinema 4D. And I mean, yeah, I ultimately did because that's what everybody was using.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like suffer from the I could keep going with Blender and it would be fine.
I also have that issue of like, I know at least for me personally, it's always that thing of like looking at work that you like and seeing like ILM breakdowns, and you're like, obviously in the back of there, and you're like, what are they using? And then like it would be so like easy to like understand if I use that thing, and so you like tell yourself that like, well, like Maya is industry standard for characters, so like if I want to do a cool character, I have to like get into that, because then I could at least watch these talks by these really smart people, and then I would like have a one-to-one to like at least like learn from. And I think that's the other thing is like these things get brought up and like built up. Like cinema has like so much great resources of like how to exactly make things you've seen before, so people are like, well, it's really good at motion design. It's like, well, that's just because motion designers use it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like motion designers use it, so good motion design comes out of it, so then other people pick it up to learn motion design, which they then make good motion design with it, and then they just keep that cycle going, where it's like, if you can understand, and that's kind of like where I've come now, is like, if you can understand these basic principles, you can see them in every piece of software and know how to execute. As long as someone says like, here's my basic setup for how I did this, you're like, okay, I can do that in any program, as long as, I mean, it's like there. Like fluid simulations like are pretty much across the board now. Like these settings will apply almost everywhere. I mean, like there's things that are outliers, like X particles is just like not following any of the rules. If you like go to like look at like another tutorial, it's just like X particles is building their own thing, which is like great. Or like Embergen is like great now, but it's like so not the norm that like it's a little hard to like take what you've learned somewhere else and like bring it over in like some of their like oddities. But yeah, I wish that we could move over to a universal format that would allow people to use whatever, and I think that would bring a ton of like artists over that paywall of like, I know a lot of people are like, look at all the stuff I use, or like all the different things, and people are like, what, like it's just impossible to like get there. Like I'm a student, like I can't like pay all that money up front to like be able to get work. And I was like,
oh yeah, I mean, absolutely,
it is hard, but like when you start working as a professional, like especially freelancer in this field, it really isn't. Like it's a couple days of work and you've paid all of your subscriptions for like the whole year pretty much, which is great, at least here in New York. But I mean, I was also definitely in that age of like, I pirated my first cinema copy. I stole everything as a student, which I didn't feel bad about as a student. As a student, I am totally fine with it. I mean, because back then people weren't good at giving you student licenses. Like,
oh yeah, like even just like the non-commercial.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I got the Adobe Suite. I was like, $500. That's so much money. And then I was like, oh god, future me is just like, no, it gets worse.
Yeah, so much worse. You want to use Nuke? Well, guess what?
You want to be a flame artist? Well, you're the only person you're going to see for a while. You're going to be in the basement, and it's going to cost you about $15,000.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Today's suites, definitely, I think almost everyone, if you email them and like, do you have a student copy? They'll give you a student copy. And I think that like that would be my route now if I were a student. But back then, like, it was just like, either pay thousands of dollars or you don't get this. Like subscriptions weren't a thing. It was just like thousands of dollars or nothing. So it's like, well, I'm gonna find someone that cracked it for me and I'm gonna use it. And I mean, like, I don't really think that the 3 years I had a cracked cinema copy before I got like a non-commercial was that detrimental to anything. But yeah, now I think if like you have any cracked stuff and you're doing professional work as like a freelancer, it's just like, but why? Like you can pay for this.
Well, that's like like, to be fair, Maya, they gave me a student copy, and it's for life as long as I have my .edu. It's come in handy for like converting files to send to cinema, but that's about it. Jaro says Blender with free Octane with 2 GPUs is a good free choice.
It really
is. That's a good shout. Yeah.
That's like more recent. Yeah, that 2 GPU Octane thing, because that's like what that was $20 a month, that like tier, and then it just became free.
Hmm.
What's up? How's it going? We're just chatting about software right now. I think that would be Jose. I think that's what that would be. Hopefully, we're pronouncing that right. Yeah, I think that Jar also said USD will get better. I really hope so.
Hmm.
I like to think that it will. I don't fully have my brain wrapped around it as like the full capabilities of it, but what it sounds like, because I looked at it through like Houdini and their new thing, like Solaris, which
Hmm.
essentially is trying to get like this universal platform, so like every artist can just use USD and like all work in the same scene, just like kind of compartmentalizing their different aspects of it. Like an environment artist can use a USD file and keep saving to it as a like character artist works in the same file, but they just don't have to have each other's like assets like turned on
Hmm.
when they like import it. But yeah, I wish we could get there. I think in like 10 years. And then if like Blender picks that up, a Blender artist and a cinema artist could work together in like the same workflow, and it would be totally fine.
Hmm.
As long as Blender doesn't go the route of like more third party payable things, because that's like also, I mean, even an issue in cinema, it's like you have like cinema, then you have like
Yeah,
cinema
yeah.
most studios use, and it's like 3 additional like plugins and an external renderer that's not universal to anyone that uses that, which is like another big pain point.
Hmm.
um, Everything should be open source. No, no one should have paid for anything. um,
Yeah. I mean, even if there's a way that like everything was open source, but you pay royalties, but even that's probably like, oh, that's a legal battle I do not want to mess with.
no, yeah, that's the pain of freelance, is like there's now a tier that I have a lot of stuff as like a freelancer that I can use for like my own stuff, where it's like I make a certain like indie level, but then like if I work with studios, it's like, ugh, now I have to like switch over to all this like full fledged like stuff for like Houdini. You have to have Houdini
Hmm.
effects, and it's like, ugh, this is
Yeah.
like a whole nother like headache of like turning that on and off when I need to like work with big clients, is a little bit of a pain as a freelancer.
So how do you maneuver that? So like if you have your suite and then you go into an
hmm
agency that requires you to do different things. What
um
then do you bill it back?
what I do is they, as a corporation, I'm like, you guys have to have this license. Most places that ask me to do Houdini work have an effects copy
Hmm.
already. So then I like remote into their machines and do my work on there.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I'll do like R&D on my own um, indie license, just with like telling them like, hey, at the end of this, like I can't just open this file
Right.
inside of FX. So like we'll have to like kind of test if it's even going to be viable. If it does seem to be working out, then we'll move into like the full fledged like effects, so that they can have the file at the end. Because like
Hmm.
at that point, then I'm like, they have a license, I could be using that, but it's just a pain over remote. So like I do it on my own machine. So I never really buy the effects version. I'm sure later on I just will, just because like it'll be like something I do all the time. Because like the indie version I have right now is like $200 a month or a year, which is pretty crazy. The effects version is way more, but right now
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't use it like every day like I do cinema, and cinema I just pay for like the full thing. Um, but Houdini I like is still like 90% personal, and then like
Hmm.
maybe 10% I use it on actual jobs, and I just remote into their machines and do it, because that's easier than like me buying it for like a little bit and billing it to them for whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also hard if like people are like, oh, you do Houdini, but they don't have a license. I'm like, you don't want to buy an effects license so that I can
Isn't that
do it
like
for a little bit.
7,400 bucks?
Is a lot. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, we'll just figure it out like with whatever you have. Or I tell them just get a Houdini artist who does have like, is a Houdini guy, and then just bring
Hmm.
him on for like a little bit. Because that would be faster anyways.
Yeah.
Marvelous Designer is a scary one. What's wrong with their licensing system? Is it like crazy? I feel like it's just like a monthly subscription, isn't it? Oh, Marvelous Designer in the terms of USD. Yeah, that is. Their entire import export system is, um, yeah, it's bad. I don't like working with Marvelous Designer. for a lot of
I
that
think
stuff.
I've only done trials of it, and I've never found the full niche to use it yet.
Yeah, especially with other things that have like come a long ways. Like
Hmm.
Houdini's Vellum is really great. It's not as like amazing or fast. And then now like ZBrush, if you're like just doing it on static stuff, is like even better. I think it
Yeah.
is really great for like pattern making and layout of like building assets.
Hmm.
It's like still like better than trying to build it in anything else because it's like super clear that way. But like my goodness, the import export of that is not not very
Yeah.
cool.
I guess I won't even dive into that one yet. I feel like there's so much that I still needed to know about just my current arsenal of shit.
Yeah, I have like a because that's I mean kind of back to like being just like a creative in this field is like the best part is that like anything like you want to try out to do you could do, and so like I would love to like do like learn more in like concept painting or all of that stuff, but like if you're also doing your daily job it's like there's no real need for me, like I never get asked to do that, so it's
Hmm.
kind of like a wasted like learning unless I want to do it for like my own personal stuff, and that's like the only reason I really learn new stuff is because like for personal reasons I want to get better at it, and then like if I do it enough maybe I could get booked for it, but like yeah, painting for me is like something that no one really asks. Like the furthest it goes is like a couple like rough sketches for a job, and then I'm just like
Yeah, yeah.
here's what I think it will look like, and they're like yeah we'll go for that, but I mean I'm just faster in other things than like sketching.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but the amount of software to learn is like an ever growing list. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. I'd like to learn that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm not gonna learn that. Like, I have so
Yeah.
many other things that are like more pressing that I should learn. Um, and I also
I'm
have
gonna
this.
I'm gonna I'm gonna grab my charger real quick. My MacBook is about to die.
Oh no, that's fine.
It started with 100.
Talk to all six of you. Thanks for showing up and chatting. If you have any questions for me or Justin, just drop them in the chat. Got a couple from Instagram that I'll get to um, that people had asked. And then in the future, for other interviews, that's mostly what I'm just going to stick with is like doing an Instagram question and fielding questions there, but then also getting some questions in the chat as well. Oh no, we just lost Justin. Just call him back. Just mute that. So we'll just wait for yeah, just for a little bit. We seem to have lost Justin. Justin is unavailable, so I think maybe his computer died. So we'll just wait a little bit for him to come back. But yeah, for all of what camera are you using to stream? So this is my Lumix G3 that I'm using with a Blackmagic capture card. So it's just like feeding the HDMI out. And then for Skype, because it won't let me use the DSLR in OBS and also in in Skype, I have like a little Logitech like webcam that I've used for those as well. Okay, I think
Sorry about
you are
that.
back. No
And
worries.
on that note, do not buy the i9 MacBook Pros.
Do not buy the i9.
Do not. Anybody watching, if you're thinking about getting an Intel MacBook, don't ever. This thing has given me problems since day one out of the box, and I've sent it back, and it's just a big old story for another day.
Is that like the newest ones?
It was the one that was released last fall, so I guess relatively new.
Hmm.
They haven't come out with a new one because I am waiting to see what their ARM.
Because they just had their conference and
MacBooks.
they like mentioned like new iPads and like Apple Watches and phones. Did they mention phones?
Not yet. I think that's
No.
coming in October.
Okay.
Yeah, I think their whole schedule. I mean, even with the iOS release, it was like they had done 8 public and developer betas, and they usually give like developers 2 weeks. They're like, all right, we're going to give you the golden master.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fine. But this time they just like they went on, they did their keynote, and then when they finished, they were like, all right, tomorrow they're being released. And devs didn't know. Devs were like, whoa, how did you just throw this on us? Because usually they get about a week from that point to like get their stuff, but they're like, no, you have 24 hours.
That's always good.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just realized you spelled my name wrong on the Twitch thing.
Did I?
Sottile.
Oh, I don't know why in the world my brain wants to spell it that way. I don't know what like subconscious thing. Do other people spell it that way? Like,
oh yeah, and actually, I think my older brother got the nickname Scotty by his gym teacher in high school because it was, yeah. My younger brother's was Saltile. Older brother was Scotty.
I think in my dyslexic brain, I see the curve of like the S next to the O, and my brain like puts a C in there because there's no reason to put. It's like you don't even pronounce it. Like it sounds like there's a C. So I don't. That's the only thing I could think is that the two curves next to each other. I'm like, there should be a C in there, but I pronounce it as Sottile because there's no. It's a silent C that would be.
Yeah, I think the hyphenation is like just since day one. It's been people will choose the last name. I was Justin Jackson for a bit, Action Jackson. But yeah, no, Sottile is Sottile is it's Italian for thin, which the irony is lost on me.
Or all like Italians, I feel like that is like not like a thing that would be a characteristic of like just all the food that they just doesn't make any sense to have it that way.
Thin. Yeah, it's also on a lot of condoms apparently over there because I mean that's a nice little nice little souvenir. Bring back a bunch of condoms with their last name. Yeah.
Ooh, finally able to make one of these streams. Hey, what's up, Box Turtle? Yeah, we just had technical difficulties, but we're back now. So this is a question that someone had on Instagram, which we can kind of get into. It says, what do you do that consistently kicks you into a creative flow? And I think that's, either one of us, but I would like to hear if you have found anything, or if in kind of my regard, I have not. I feel like I always am finding new things that do that.
I think it's just more about getting, like for me, I can't work unless my space is clean. Clear space, clear head. And I don't know, I've started using Pinterest a lot more. Like I never thought there was going to be a tool that creatively gets me going, but there's some good stuff on there. Like you can kind of just delve into, like even when you're like searching for, pack animations, like the stuff, even the ads that come up are like refined to your search keywords. And then you're like, well, I wasn't looking for these, but now I am, and this is great, and I'm taking this. And there's also PureRef. I've also been using that. It's just a great tool to take things from, you just copy and paste, and it brings everything in this kind of clipboard that's live on your desktop. And you can even make mood boards from that, export. That one I've been using a lot.
I just started that. Like I'd always heard it, and I was like, like, I don't know. I'll open images when I need to look at images, but the locking feature where you can like lock it above everything is like so great, because then you don't have to like especially for like reference stuff, like you don't have to like keep like toggling between like on and off images. You just kind of have it like up in a little corner of like these little images that you can like zoom into. That was a big one that I've recently started using.
I mean, its UI is a little all over the place. Like it is kind of hard to get your grasping on it, but it's a good tool, and I like using it.
I like Pinterest for when I'm looking for specific things, or I need Pinterest to find related looking things. Like I know like I like one image, and I'll like put it in there and see if they can find like very specific things related to that. The only thing I don't like about Pinterest is how much it's like destroyed Google image searching of things. It's just like everything is a Pinterest link to something. I'm like, oh my god, can I just get like the source of this? Because like a lot of times you want to find like the source artist and like look more into their stuff, but it's just like a myriad of like, okay, this Pinterest pinned it from this Pinterest pinned it. It's just like a click hole of like, and then it's just like, do you want to see 1,000 other things that look just like this? And you're like, no, I just want to find like the very specific artist.
or like a good version of this one.
Yeah, or a high res or like image to like pull, but it's all just like horribly degraded thumbnails that it's generated for you.
Oh, yeah.
ArtStation is also another one that I've kind of, it isn't as good on that like discovery thing, but it's like if you know the specific term or like program that you want to like be searching under for like stuff like mech robots or something, like it's also great because they sometimes post like breakdowns and other things like related to it. I feel like it's a lot better than Behance, which is just like very graphic design photography based. Like ArtStation is the like 3D CG side of that.
And there's also a pretty good Chrome plugin called Muesli Design, and it just turns your web page into kind of like this design oriented news feed.
Oh,
which,
interesting.
Yeah, I find sometimes helpful. And then there's the gold standard Motionographer for so much.
I also have been using Save It, which is like SAVEE.it, which allows you to like take any image and like save it just like as you would an image, but into like a gallery that you can like visit again. And then I normally like scroll through those and pull those into my pure ref because I'm not good at making like pure ref like specific boards. I kind of just like make one big one and then like scroll around it when I have it up. I'd say for me, that consistently kicks me into a creative flow is like kind of like not my space being clean, but like a to-do list is something that like I always have to do.
I remember you had on your second monitor there was a Google Doc.
I do it for a lot of jobs. Because then when people ask you like, what have you been doing? You can just be like, I've been doing this on this monitor. And you can see and like every day you can kind of like keep track, which I like, especially as a freelancer. If they like are ever like, what were you doing? Like on this specific day, you'd be like, well, I executed these things. And it won't, I don't know if that'd hold up in court, but it at least holds up in like being able to like talk about something. But yeah, I have to like break things down. Like if I want to do like a personal project, I have to like be like, what is all the stuff that will have to be done for this, and then break it down, and I can start to like see all the tasks like that grow out of just a simple idea, and then I can kind of like start like killing off like the easy ones and like getting in a flow, and then that working on something will get me like in the mood to like work on more stuff. But like I also just have the issue of like getting burnt out after like 2 weeks of anything, and then like I'll be like, I like this project, and then just be like, I will never touch that project for another couple months, and then I'll come back to it.
It's that new project glow. And I think that's also like another way to kind of keep creatively juiced up is being able to like, call it quits on a project and switch to something new without being forced out of a project. Because like there are some times where you're in it and you're ready to go, and then you have to go jump on another project. And multitasking fatigue is a real thing. Being in one mindset and then having to jump in something else all of a sudden, it's just like, well, now I need a turnaround time like for this other project because I'm not in it. Like it's different. It's a totally different thing.
Right. Yeah. I also will like, kind of shuffle days of the week. Like if I'm like feeling motivated, I will try to do that where it's like I should have a certain amount of time for like learning and then a certain amount of time for like executing, or else I find that I'll just like absorb and like just watch stuff and feel like I'm doing things where I'm like really just kind of like viewing someone that else is being productive, being like, oh, I watched like 6 courses or like tutorials, but I didn't do anything, and so I like feel accomplished, but it's like kind of not really anything happened. So I felt like I have to like do some learning, which is great, so like it kind of helps you get up out of like plateaus where you're just like, I feel like I'm not growing as an artist, and then take that and then at the same time be like using it, maybe not the specific thing you watch, but like executing on something, and then you're like you're not going to get stuck in either one. Question for when you're moving to the next one: what new technology is exciting for you to put it's a new question, so is there anything else that you had for your creative workflow, or is that's kind of question answered?
I think that's about it. I mean, coffee is that.
Just
a bunch of Matt Brown's also another really good motion designer and 3D artist. Him and I love Wandering Bear. That black coffee, it's like jet fuel, but it's pretty good. It keeps us going.
Yeah, mine would be like iced tea. I don't really drink coffee. Which is a downside when you're like in studios. Everyone will go for a coffee break, and you're like, I started drinking coffee at one studio just for the like social like action of leaving the office. But yeah, that's funny. Matt Brown actually had a question. He said, why did you both leave me with Simon? which is another artist that we worked with. We all kind
Yeah.
of built up this little back room of like the four of us, and then two of us left. It made it half the size.
Yeah, it was you and I, and then there's Simon Verrill, who is a fantastic retoucher,
Mm-hmm.
the best I know, and Matt Brown, 3D artist extraordinaire.
Matt Brown would know the thing about frosted glass, and like someone asked a question about how we deal with frosted glass, but I don't really do much of that. That'd be more of a Matt Brown question. Maybe we'll get him in his own interview, and he can talk to all the cool rendering stuff that he does, because he does like insane, like realistic, cool stills. He does some motion too, but mostly stills.
Oh yeah, this stuff is next level.
So we had the question: what new technology is exciting for you to put into your workflow? Technology, I would say all the new graphics cards, if I could ever get one, would help my workflow. But what are you looking for? Technology? I guess technology or software, I guess, would be another thing workflow wise.
Yeah, I think it's just now that RTX is more mainstream, like now it's being rolled out into consoles coming this fall. But it is, I mean, NVIDIA kind of had us on a very, very expensive beta test last year for the RTX technology, because the 2080 Ti, it's 2800 Ti's. They never made it to 29, right?
Yeah, it stopped at 2080.
Those were just like, I mean, $1,400 for this card that's now worth $400. Well, no, not even.
People are
like
still selling them for a bunch.
But you can buy the new 3800s. That's what, like 3 times that for $499.
Right. Yeah, which is insane. Which I've also seen people saying that like those are also beta testers, because it's taken such a leap. I mean, it's like not beta testing RTX, it's now beta testing just like all the new like chips and all the stuff that like those are built on top of. Everyone every time is like, oh, you're beta testing new stuff. It's like, well, that is like the sacrifice of getting new technology. But like when I was comparing my current setup that is just two 1080 Ti's, and I was looking at like a single 3080 that smashes like both of those and replaces them essentially, I was like, well, it's just so cheap and so good right now that like I'll take it if like I have to kind of like put up with some woes that I feel like a lot of like 2080 Ti people really had to deal with, where like render engines weren't quite there, but like now they seem to be a little bit better at like RTX on and like Octane Redshift. So I was like, I'll definitely, if I could ever find the any one in stock, try to get a 3080. 3090, I mean, I don't know, it's just so big. It takes up so much space that like I couldn't in my machine. I would just have to have a single 3090, which I'm sure would be sufficient, but I would, because
it's 3 blowers now, isn't it? Or
three slots.
3 slots.
It's a big boy. I feel like if you do those, you should just like wait for like a liquid cooled situation, so you don't have to have like such a massive fan situation going on.
Yeah, I've never done liquid cooling for GPU, just only CPU.
Oh,
because I never really overclock it. And right now I have like a micro ATX case, and I just have two 2080 Ti's as a blower, so they just kind of get rid of all their stuff.
Yeah, it's just another hassle. Like I feel like it's like you slowly graduate up through like your PC-ness that you can be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna start like liquid cooling stuff and I'll like be confident. But like right now I'm just barely getting comfortable with everything that I have in there, and like when stuff dies being like, oh, what do I need to do to like make sure this doesn't happen? And like last year was my calamity with hard drives and like setting up like a NAS situation so that I can have like all the backups running in RAID and all of that stuff, because before I was just like, as long as it runs and it can do stuff, I will be fine. And then everyone's like, you should really have backups. And I was like, oh, it's like a whole new setup of other things. It just is forever growing. Even as tech gets better, you're just like going to keep adding and adding and adding. It's never going to be satisfying.
I know. I remember the beginning, I was like really into like the RGB stuff, and I was like ready to make, but now it's like as discreet as I can make it, because like my computer is in that IKEA shelf, just a little cube, and it's just slotted in, just because I don't want it out in the open.
I was worried a little bit. Motherboard errors though, you have to get up to see them.
Yeah, I know. That's the downside. Well, hopefully I don't have much of those.
Mine is all function over form for me. Like most of the time I'll like remove both sides because I just don't. It just like sits below me there, so that I can like easily like troubleshoot stuff, because for a while I was having so many issues with different things that I just like took both sides off. I'm just like, I just need access to you like all the time. And I was tired of like flipping it over and taking the sides off, that I just like removed all of that and would like unplug stuff while it was like standing up. But
I think it's also part of the workflow too. I think it's, it is most often function over form for a lot of professional stuff. I mean, even when it comes to different OSs, it's like, yes, I use Windows for modeling, gaming, all the stuff that Windows is known for, but then there are perks to the Apple side of things.
Right.
So like when I'm doing illustration, it's iPad, and then I can just airdrop it to my computer and then continue working from that. So I think there is a lot of I think people just get too absorbed in a lot of this stuff, that I think it's, as long as you can find the tools to get you going, it's really redundant.
Yeah. And I think Jaro has a good question to follow up. That is like, when watching tutorials, do you watch the tutorial all the way through before executing on the tutorial, or just follow and execute on first watch? You can answer first.
I usually, it's something like when I'm in a hurry and I'm like, I really just need to figure this out, I'll watch it up until the point where I can kind of take it. Like there are some where it gets to a spot where I'm comfortable with kind of, calling the ending. But there are a lot that I'll just have running in the background. It's kind of just like, hopefully, it's like when you feed a baby noise and
you'll just pick up something.
Yeah, it's like maybe I'm just sitting there, like doing my work, listening to these things go, then my brain is picking it up subconsciously. And then the next time I activate it, it's like, yes, I can do this.
Yeah, I think that's like, there's like two different circumstances where I will watch a tutorial. One's like, I need really quickly to know like the buttons of like what I need to click to get something working. And that's normally like when I'm like on a job or something, trying to like figure something out. I'll just like kind of like 2x speed and like click through it through like there's like the intro, and you're just like, I don't need any of this. I just need to like know like the 3 things you click to like get that working.
Yeah.
So I'll like revisit stuff all the time.
So you're more of a visual, not like a listener.
Yeah, I mean for that kind of thing. And then like if I'm like a course or like a long form tutorial, I'll just kind of like sit down with like it playing, and then I have like a notes up, because I find that I like remember stuff better if I like take notes while I watch it. So I'll just have like a different Google Docs for like different courses or tutorials that I'm watching that I like just keep open, and I like add my own like quick tips so that I don't have to rewatch them. I just like go to my notes and like can like control find, like search through them and be like, okay, cool, like these are a couple of things, or like timestamp where all those notes are going. Dang, 2x speed is a good idea. Yeah, people just, I mean, most people you can clearly understand, because everyone is told to talk slower in tutorials, which is like great, but also awful. So I'm just like 2x speed, and then most of the time, like it's just nice because you can be like, oh, this is a 30-minute tutorial. Now it's a 15-minute tutorial, and you can just like blaze through it and get all the necessary info.
Yeah.
There's a cool little plugin for Vimeo that I use a lot that allows you to enter any playback speed. I wonder what it's called. Because that's been nice, because like I find a lot of really quality tutorials are on Vimeo, not YouTube, or at least they're easier to find on Vimeo. But Vimeo is a sucky video playing platform. It's just not very good for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I use it a lot for like in-house internal reviews, because that I think that the review tool is very handy.
Yeah.
When it is, you can you have timestamps, and then you can just press on a frame a little dot that says, "This is what I want you to fix," and they'll say no.
Yeah, I found a couple places use different stuff. Like Vimeo was like what we used, and like a lot of agencies use that because you can like password lock them and use that review tool. There's another program that a different studio was using that was like, I forget what it's called, but it's essentially the review tool on Vimeo, but it's its own platform. Shotgun and F-Track feel like a lot more like VFX house things, because those can like integrate like into software, which is kind of cool. Or at least as far as I know, they like integrate into like Maya, and like all of Autodesk stuff.
Okay.
So those are, I feel like ILM, at least I know, and like Blur and those big studios use Shotgun for like their producers to be able to like track on stuff. But like other places I'm at are just like Dropbox, and like you have a dailies folder and you're just like putting videos into there. And that's just, I think those people use that because the files then are like backed up all the time, and you don't have to like be uploading like videos and like going through all that stuff. But yeah, I've never found anything that like is a standard that everyone uses, because everyone, like whoever was there first, kind of picks what the workflow is for that sort of thing.
I mean, I kind of wish that there was one that had like nice Slack integration.
Right.
So that, I mean, because that's the platform that, you know, freelance, full-time, you've used Slack and you're on Slack. And I think that having a tool to, especially now, I feel like a lot of stuff should be changing from this whole working from home quarantine situation that allows you to, because I feel like that's one of my biggest qualms with this, is just not being able to call someone over to your screen and say, hey, can you take a look at this?
Right.
Without having to package things up. Yeah. And even like live streaming, it's just like, well, there's a bit of a latency, and I want you to have like the full effect, especially with things that hit beats and that are a little bit more of a prescriptive time code. I do wish that there was just a better system for just saying, hey, can look at my screen. What do you think?
Dropbox Business has a Slack integration for commenting on assets. It does. I don't want to be the person that's like, well, we could like integrate this into our Slack thing at Studios. I'm just like, send you a link. A couple places I'm at actually have like, because like normally the process was like, you just like whatever thing you're using, you send like a link to someone and you're like, check this out. But after working on a couple of things that were like internet blocked for like bigger places and bigger projects that are more like black boxed, there was like no links. Like you couldn't do anything. You like purely have to be like in cryptic words, like this is up here, you like know it's in my folder, and like go look at it, and then like they'll go to like the secure folder and look at it. So it's always learning new different things, but I wish that there was more of a standard thing. And like that work from home's great for that stuff, like you were saying, but it's also at least for us as artists, like sometimes a big hurdle where you just want to keep the After Effects like comp open and show them 2 frames, and then just be like, which one do you like, or like showing them in context. But if they like want to see the whole shot, then you're like, now I got to do the whole render out, and it's just like so much harder to just get quick approval on stuff. You're just like, a lot of my day is like managing my files and like uploading my files for people, and then like sending them videos to look at. It's all this like extra stuff that I kind of would like in-house put off to like last minute, like let it all upload at night.
I think that's why I'm fortunate. My current agency is they give me a lot of discretion, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for me to kind of do my thing and then show them stuff a little bit later on without having the prescriptive, oh, can we just see that before you start anything else, or like just getting rounds of feedback with. I'm super grateful that especially now, I have that kind of working relationship.
Because how many people are in your team?
It's just 3.
Oh, so it's another smaller team.
Yeah, but I only work with one of the other guys who just does the motion stuff. I rarely, the team is just one visualizer that does mainly stills. One visualizer that can kind of go half and half, and then there's me for motion. Yeah,
so a little close to what we had before, but a little bit smaller.
Yeah, I do appreciate the smaller stuff, because I think you become less of just a cog in a wheel.
Yeah,
and become more of a thinker, a doer.
Yeah, and that is nice to have a little bit more autonomy. I've found that like as a freelancer, you kind of like come in and there is like a couple levels of people that you like have to send your stuff to and get approval. I mean, sometimes they're just like at your discretion, but you kind of have to default to like whatever they want, because like they are like a client to you, and they're a client to someone, and they're a client to someone. Sometimes it's just like you kind of are not really in those rooms as much as like a full-time person, where like you're approving stuff. You're kind of just there to like execute your work, like think for yourself as like a creative, but then like a lot of times just defer to them, which is like a different thing that I've gotten used to. CG Rockstar, hey, what's up? Thanks for stopping by. Jose says that he's been using Miro with a couple of studios for daily reviews, LookDev, and it's a great tool.
Nice, that's good.
Yeah, there's so many different ones that like people use. It's interesting that those are all I think that's another thing that's like coming up in like work from home. More places are like figuring out like what their kind of like online review is, whereas like maybe they were used to just like people coming in and like, I know at least like at our old agency, a lot of times it was like you would wait for the creative director to like walk in and like look at your screen and give verbal approval, but now they're like, you're hounding them to like look at a link and you're like, hey, sent that to you 2 hours ago, can we please move forward because you have final say on this. It's like, ugh, there's no way to like physically grab their attention and be like, look at this and give approval.
And even some people, it is as finicky as just like sending them a direct link to something that they can press play, because like, God forbid you got to go into 2 more links just to see something. I think there's that like, all right, come on, like do it because I'm asking
you. So are there any projects like personal or like I guess at work, I don't know, probably a little bit harder because of like NDAs that you're working on that you're excited about?
I think personally, I'm doing a collaboration with Shruti. She's one of my coworkers. She came to me with an idea about doing some like kind of New York COVID scenes. And it was kind of like, it was more of an opportunity for me to get out of 3D for a bit and go more After Effects strictly. But they're beautiful illustrations, and we're going to continue to start doing them.
What is it on Instagram?
I'll put her Instagram in the chat.
Cool. Yeah. I saw that stuff, and I mean, like, you have, I tagged both of them when I like mentioned that you were going to be on. You have like your doodle Instagram as well. That's like a little bit of everything. It's like some 3D stuff, some like a lot of your like iPad sketches in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I want to kind of maneuver the whole Instagram space, because I think also now, because it's like, everybody's working from home, at home, living at home, you don't really get those face-to-face interactions anymore, so no one really knows more about you. And I think now Instagram has become your storefront. Like that's your identity online and now like personally. So I'm not really sure how if I want to just stick to my regular at Justin Sottile or switch things over.
Right. Which that was a little bit hard for the same reasons. It was like I grew a base of followers on like what was just my normal Instagram that like years before I'd like done really any 3D stuff was just like a random amount of like Instagram posting of like personal stuff and like just photos and like all these different things. And I like at some point I was like, I feel like all these people are here for the art that I do, so I'll just kick over to like just a secondary account.
Because I know you did the TikTok stuff at the beginning.
Yeah, and I did that stuff, and I was just, and people were like, I like got a lot of responses that were like, I'm not really here to like follow you for that, so I had to unfollow because you're just like posting too much like personal stuff. I was like, whoa, that's like, I had always thought that people were there for like the art, but like they were just like genuinely upset that I was like posting not art stuff. I was like, oh, I felt like my like there's a weird like hierarchy, like your posts have to kind of keep the same as like what everyone was there for, but I felt like your story is like open for like it goes away, so like no one really cares like what's on your story.
That's a good point.
And that's kind of how I've like dealt with it, especially with like it's like some social like political climate stuff. I was like, my story can have that, but I don't need to like make posts about it, because then like those are like the forever thing that are like archived in my feed. But then people are like, even in the political stuff, people are like, you're like, I just want to see art, like I don't really want to see like what you're up to. I was like, cool, okay, I have a second account if you want to follow that for like just random photos of New York, I guess. And like I moved all the TikTok stuff. I mean, my TikTok now is like, was just fun in the beginning, but now I was like, it's just like niche, I guess, 3D motion design jokes and like random art that just like sits over there now. I haven't really done anything on it. I've become more of a viewer than a creator.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that was kind of like that was the middle ground though. Like you are still keeping it with your work, but you're also just making TikToks about.
That was like the compromise. I was like, I do have fun things that like, it's just so funny because there's so many like different premises on that platform that are so different from other platforms, where it's like MoGraph memes on Instagram like really took a hold of like memes are a thing and we can like add motion design to it, where I was like, TikTok memes are like so different in like how they're created than like traditional memes. I was like, that'd be a fun space, but after a while, like I just get bored with everything. So it was like, everyone's like, you should make more of those. I was like, yeah, but I don't know. I did make them, and now I don't want to make anymore because I did it, and I did like I
Yeah.
executed the ideas I had, and people are like, I don't really want to like keep thinking of new ones. I was just like, these were easy ones that I had thought of. I don't really want to have to like think about making a new TikTok every day. But
Yeah.
the people have been asking.
Especially when you have other things going on like
Right.
work and yeah, I think that was the main struggle for a lot of people at the beginning of quarantine because it was just like, should I be using this time to
Yeah.
make cool stuff, or should I just take this as like this is my year of rest and relaxation?
Really. Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out because I am making some stuff that I don't feel like I normally would have had I not been because like this is my desk. When I'm finished work, I'm still on my computer, so I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of open stuff up. There's no commute back home that wastes
Right.
some creative energy. Um, but it's like, but I also feel like I could have done more.
Mm-hmm.
But am I at fault for that? Because this is
Right.
kind of a time that's unprecedented for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone had like those grandiose ideas of like, oh, this will be my time to like
Yeah,
learn, and I will become a Renaissance person, and I will emerge like a crazy artist. But like I mean, at the beginning, like the first month, I was like, this is great. Like, yeah, all this free time. But then at the 3-month mark, you're like, I work, and then I work more in the same spot for
yeah,
my own stuff. And I was like, and then I go insane. And it's just like, I have to like leave this desk and go somewhere and do something else. And so like one of my outlets was VR. Like I bought like a Quest because like before VR was like such a big hurdle because you had like all these like trackers you had to put up everywhere, and like I didn't want to do that anywhere in my house. And then like eventually the Quest like had gotten to a point where people were like, this is good, this will like work. And I was like, awesome, I'll just go in my living room and like do that stuff. And it's like, because like video gaming also means that I'm sitting here in the same spot. Like that's where my like
same.
setup
Yeah,
is. I'm like, I cannot game also in the same spot that I've just worked for like 8 hours. So I had to like do something in like VR like feels more active. So
Mhm.
I like do like boxing stuff and then just like random games on that. And that like in quarantine has been like my separation of like I don't go outside, but I'm also not sitting at the same desk that I've been at
Yeah,
for like 8 hours. That's like kept me from going insane.
yeah. I
Um,
started doing that too with the what was the mountain climbing one?
just the climb,
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
made by like Oculus.
But even just doing that, like you do, you know, you have a sweat afterwards, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so I did something. But I don't know. I think it's a nice little release, and I think with Oculus, the second one that's coming out, um,
Isn't it out? You can buy it now.
is it? I didn't know.
I keep getting ads on Facebook that it's out, and people are really mad because they didn't really tell anyone they were releasing it, and then they just dropped it at like a way cheaper price point with better tech, and everyone's like, "Well, I just bought the other one. You didn't tell
Yeah,
me."
because I think the regular one was $3.99 for just the base version.
Right, that's the one I got, and now it's like $2.99
Yeah,
for a better version and 64 gigabytes. Yeah, you can get it right now. Oculus.com.
very
I'm looking
cool.
at it. Yeah.
This is my next question. Are you getting one?
No, because I
What are you
just
ordering?
bought one like a couple months ago. Um,
Yeah, that is like I really only use it for the Oculus Link stuff. I'm
mm,
really glad that they were because if you bought a new like regardless if it was the Quest or the what was the other one that was the standalone, but it didn't have the room tracking. It had like another like Voyage name to it.
I don't know.
Uh, but that was kind of just like that was the Google Daydream,
Was
but
it
it
the
had a
Rift?
separate.
That's what
It
Char was saying.
was the Rift, and then there was another one that just had like the tiny little remote. It was way cheaper. I think it was only $100, and
Oh,
it felt more like the Daydream because it
mm,
didn't have the room tracking. It was just kind of the 360 thing.
right.
But each library was different, so you had to buy games on different.
See, yeah, that's like, yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, but with the link, then you
It's
can
all in
just
your
hook
Steam,
it up.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just press it in your computer. Oh yeah, Oculus Go. That was the one. That
right.
was I. Yeah, I got that at Walmart just because it was
I mean, those
Christmas
weren't very
break.
expensive, were they? They were
No, I think
like
it was just
sub a
100
hundred,
bucks.
yeah,
But
$100.
even then, like, yeah, I got at Walmart because I was home for Christmas and I was just like, I need something to do. So I went and got it and I returned it the next day because I was like,
Right,
it's not. If I wanted to do that kind of stuff, I would have just put my phone into a cardboard.
right.
You know?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would get the new one because all my stuff would, I think, transfer because it's on my like Oculus account is where I like got all my games and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I was looking at reviews and they're like, if you have one like that you've recently got, and like if you weren't like the day one person, it's not really like worth like the slightly better tracking and like updates, because you also get to beta some of those updates that they make to the hardware, because it's like I mean like the vision, like the pixel count on the screen's like a little bit better, but like I mean if you're playing on a Quest, you're kind of just like being okay with like not like pro quality like VR. You're just like, I just want VR and I can just kind of like squint past like all the like not like pro stuff that's happening in it, and then like link it up to my PC to like have like better performance.
Especially with that OLED screen, because there is that like up close Venetian blinding of a lot of this stuff, and the color smearing. So I mean, like, I'm really glad that they reduced the price, but I feel like
if you were going to get one, it is great. If you have one already,
I think there's a cool space for it. Like, I know Jaro's doing. I mean, Jaro is always doing something cool.
Something in all the spaces.
In another realm, in a virtual world or an experiential space. He's getting a lot of love in this one.
Into VR stuff. I'm into VR as a consumer, I feel like more. I have done some like testing in like Unity a while back, like back when I like it was just like the Vive was like the only one that could do stuff. I did stuff back then and it was cool. It was like really sweet to like be able to like really quick build a scene. Like I remember one day I was like a scene of skyscrapers, and then like made the like ground like a bouncy like collision object, so you could like bounce around this like cityscape that I built. Really fun. So like for 3D people, I think it's really cool because you already have the skill to build anything. If you can figure out how to import that into Unity and then like go through the few hurdles of like hooking up your Vive, it's like super dope to like be able to walk around your creations. That's like always cool no matter what. But it's like if you want to like go like more into it, there's like a ton more like dev hurdles that you have to now think about that are like I'm just like I could not. I don't really want to work on like VR stuff, so I'm like I'd like to make assets maybe for it, but I mean at that point it's essentially the same as making assets for games, really. There's not like too much differential between those two.
I think if I ever did anything in VR, I think it would be something story based, like a short film, because I think there was that one was it Henry the Hedgehog? I think it was produced by Elijah Wood. But that, and then there was I think it was Angelica. Dear Angelica was made by the Oculus Studios. Those, something about being in that space and everything is moving around you brings you in, and then you just start bawling your eyes out. I mean, I'm just a crier naturally, you know that. But I think with these, it takes you to another level. And there was another one, I think it was narrated by Martin Starr from Silicon Valley. And it's about, he plays a 911 dispatcher. And the way that it's built, so you're hearing all these calls, and then it's kind of, the scene is moving around you as a, kind of like a hologram. Right. But it's all based on like sound orientation. And the way that they bring you into everything, it's another level of emotion. And I think there's something powerful about that storytelling technique that I'd love to get into that space.
It's also, I think, as like a storyteller, it's one way to like totally confirm that your viewer is like paying attention. Like they have to have it in front of their face with like headphones in. Like I feel like it's the best way, even if like it was like mostly doesn't take advantage of VR-ness or like VR things. I feel like it's like as a storyteller, like you've already like passed that hurdle that like you're already fighting, where like you're trying to get them to pay attention and like look at the screen and like not be distracted. So it's like already like you got that checked off, so now you can just like intentionally like do fun stuff around that.
Because it's like you're already suited up, might as well stay a bit.
I think that I'm mostly interested in like the cool stuff that like I mean just like physics or like the otherworldliness that you can like quickly set up, and like that was always like my fun thing, is like you could like have like force capabilities, and it's like the hurdle to making that in like game engine is like a little bit easier than I would think like making it in like a full VFX pipeline, and it's like more of like way more satisfying than like doing a sim in like Houdini that like takes like 20 hours with all these particles. Is like making the like easiest form that like way more exceeds like your excitement of like, whoa, I can like pull every object in the room like this way. It's like, that's cool versus like doing a really crazy sim to me.
Yeah,
Because the experience is better.
Yeah, and it feels like you're more in control of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, real time is always just way more interesting to me because there's like that. You now have no friction. Like if you want to go film something in this thing, you just like move your like little person over there and you like film it. It's like just at the sacrifice of like fidelity. CG Rockstar had a question up here. He said, but I had somehow bumped into your channel and I saw that you had mine recommended list. Was curious what you guys do. Yeah, I recommended your channel because I was looking for other people on Twitch that like kind of do sort of like more art streams in like the space of stuff I do. I personally am like just a general 3D artist, like motion designer, working in like cinema and that sort of stuff, like 3D rendering for like commercials and a little bit now trying to move into like film. And then Justin, you are also kind of in the same boat, a little bit more of like a senior like director / like more storyteller based version of that. Anything to get the story told kind of thing,
with the occasional voiceover.
Yeah. Has that mic like come in handy at all for like, I know we used to do a ton of like really like hodgepodge voiceovers at our old agency. I would assume that mic has like helped with that.
It's helped for more of kind of how I adjust my voice and things. I haven't really gotten to flex it too much yet, but I mean there are a bunch of stuff coming in that I'll be able to use it for, but I think it's more practice based right now. Like I don't think I'm ever going to hop on Fiverr and do VO stuff, but I think, I don't know, it's just more because my girlfriend says that I mumble sometimes, and there's a bit of, vocal training when it comes to being able to hear your voice in full fidelity and being able to kind of just track it and how you pronounce things. I think right now it's practice, but I'd like to kind of flex it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's I got my setup, I mean mainly for streaming purposes, but mostly because it like saves a ton of time in post, at least for me. Like I would always like fight with my old crappy microphone to like do noise reduction, then like do some punching of the voice. But now it's like a lot of the time just kind of just out of the box, like I can roll with it 99% of the time, unless there's like a major issue that I have to like do something for it, and that's like already enough is like a time saver, is why I would tell anyone that like wants to do like any sort of like voiceover or like tutorial recording or like live streaming, just get a good mic so you don't have to like fight with your mic the whole time. And it like fixes so many issues.
It is funny how much paid work I had that I had to use my the old wired Apple headphones.
Oh, with it like built in?
Yeah, and just like denoised it to hell.
Sound like a little bit of a robot.
Yeah, and they take it and they're like, this is great, we'll use it, and then it ends up being in a final cut that some audio designer just took it and made it something happen. So I don't know. I also want to get more into sound editing, and because I know the basics, like I'll use it in projects all the time with Audition integration with Premiere and just kind of mess up a couple things, but like really not getting into the whole nitty gritty of it. I think that's something that's on the next in my workflow.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the kind of thing we were talking about, is like you just want to learn whatever you can to like execute on like any idea that you have. So like for me, I mean, I think anyone that has like done their own short or like own animated thing, it's like you learn how to do like the most basic form of like sound design, because like a lot of us don't want to like have to pay someone to like do sound design on your free project that you're working on. So yeah, I've like know enough of it, but like I would love to get more into it. But then there's also that threshold of like, if I do like something that's like super high grade, I would also rather just like offload that to someone that's like really good and be like, you just do the sound design, because I know that like I could like take a couple months to like learn how to do it right, but I'd rather just like invest in you to like totally hit it out of the park and not really have to think about like that as an extra aspect of this thing.
I mean, that is it's a good point, because it is just like you and I feel like have to to learn and know so much that there are a couple of things that we're just like, let's just send it out to someone.
Yeah, just give it to
who
someone
already knows. Yeah.
And then, I mean, without saying anything specific about this, we both had an experience where like we did that for a project, and then at the end we're like, we could have done that way better. Like this was not the saving like silver bullet we were hoping. It was just at the end you're just like, I could have done that. It's just like if I do that, I want to send it to like someone that's just gonna nail it. Where it's like, yeah, never could have done that. But I think that's also the curse, is like a lot of stuff you're like, probably could have done that better. I think the main ones that like are sitting for me are like any amount of character design. I'm just not even gonna mess with it. Like 90% of the time, I'm just gonna be like, you guys should get a specialist in for this. But then like, environment stuff, it's like, or like any of like rendering scenes or anything, I'll just be like, like if a studio asks, I'll try it. But if they're like, you want to do characters, I'm like, nope, just send that to somebody that really knows how to do that, because I'm not gonna figure that out. Even though it's like an alluring thing that I'll just be like, that'd be fun to learn one day and like be good at.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also like when you attach a price tag to it, it's like, you're sending it out to another agency that should be knowing how to do this stuff for this amount of money, and then you're like, all right, I could do it better than that.
Ableton. Yeah, I've been playing with Ableton. I don't really think of it as like a sound design sort of thing. I don't know if any other people use it for sound design, but I really like it for all their tools that they have for like music creation or like scoring. I think the Ableton's really cool, and they have a really, really good like ecosystem. Like they like make really high quality videos. They do really cool interviews with people that use it. Their YouTube channel's really like active, and it's like just it's a little bit of like overkill design wise, like in the UI it's like a little daunting, but I think that it's still laid out really well with the amount of stuff you can do with Ableton. But I mean, Audition is just great because like a lot of the times we're in Premiere, just like kick it out to something that can do like a little better noise reduction than like Premiere can, and then you just like link it back in.
And even taking like stock audio that doesn't have an ending and just trimming it, bringing it into Audition really quick, and just adding just a nice reverb for like a second or two, and then just bring it back in. It's just like, it's so fast,
right? And
you can get a nice little ending just by not doing anything.
Reaper is a good Pro Tools alternative. Interesting.
Yeah.
Pro Tools is like the Mac video editor, right? I've never used Pro Tools.
Pro Tools is an audio editor.
Oh.
It's it's definitely, I tried it out.
Oh, Pro Tools. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like, like music industry standard, like big stuff. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I used it a little bit in college because I was recording a couple people, but I haven't really used it since.
I feel dumb because I took two sound design courses that were all in Pro Tools in college. What's the
so
final?
You learned a lot.
I learned a lot of it. I mean, I did like it. It was very convoluted. I liked Reason more, just because it was like way cooler with all the like synth that Reason's had. But okay. I'm thinking of Final Cut. That's what I'm thinking of. That is the Mac editor that people constantly say is similar to Premiere, but I've never once seen an editor in any capacity use Final Cut at an agency.
No, me neither. Same with Avid. I remember I was doing this one thing for an event in Dallas, and it was like this big old building that needed to have Avid because that's what they set up everything in. And it was like all this live broadcasting tools, but they like wanted all my files in Avid. And I had to scramble to learn it because it was just like, like 50 plus guys who are just, that's what they were brought up on.
Right.
Because Avid is such an old school way of editing and producing that. So I had to learn that up really fast and given the stuff. And I was like, it was a real like Hail Mary moment because I didn't know if it was, like the event was like in an hour. I was like, oh God. But it's like one of those things that like people are like, I use Avid. I use, whatchamacallit, what's the other one? Yeah, Final Cut Pro. But those, I just don't want to touch them. I don't think that outside of Premiere or DaVinci, I need to mess with another editor.
Has Sony Vegas died off yet? Is that still a thing that has updates? I remember that was like way back in like the early days. I was like looking at video editing things, and I was like, there was like Sony Vegas, Final Cut, and then like After Effects, I guess. And everyone was like, there's still ADS? What is that?
There's still ads. So there's still... Why? Why?
I can't think of any justification. Unless you are making COD like clip like for YouTube, that's the only people that I saw that were using Sony Vegas, because it had a bunch of like built-in crappy effects that they were like great for using.
Even I'm looking at their website right now. Even their icons are
Old.
They look like they're part of the Adobe suite.
Oh, maybe they
want to be.
They're punching up.
Yeah. Like if you put it in your taskbar and you're like, oh, just accidentally clicked on me, huh?
I remember the biggest lie is that I would watch videos that were like from Sony saying that they use Sony Vegas on Sony films. I was like, no, you did not. Like they were trying to show effects that like would work as comparable as like effects used in like films. Maybe not by Sony, but like in films. I was like, this is not true. This is never going to be used. That was always, my weird progression into this stuff. Like I used PowerPoint to make logos because it was the only program that had like vectors or close to vectors. It doesn't even have that. So I'd make logos, and then I found out that you should use Adobe Illustrator. I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then Adobe Illustrator I learned and was like making logos there. And then I wanted to like do video, and I found out like After Effects is essentially like the movie form of Illustrator because they're in the same family. I was like, cool, I'll use After Effects. And then After Effects into Element 3D. I was like, oh, 3D is cool. I wonder if I can do like better 3D. And then they're like, you should use Cinema because it linked to After Effects. And I was like, awesome. And then I never used Cinelink again because Cineware is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And then, Cinema into Houdini. But I think it's weird that you can like have this weird trail of like everything touches everything else, and you could like delve really deep into something just through like software alone.
I'm still trying to get over how all this started with PowerPoint.
Yeah. Well, it started with
your motion graphics empire started.
Right. Because have you ever heard of 99U or 99 Designs? It was like a website where anyone could make a logo. People would like post like, hey, I need a logo and I'll pay like $200 for it. And you could submit a logo for free for them. And then like out of 200 designs, they would like pick one, and then that person would get like the prize money. And it's super exploitive and really bad. And I don't think it would survive now. Maybe it still is around, but I was like, how can I make logos? Like drawing them and scanning them wasn't winning. And I was like, I got to be like better at this. So I was like, I can make some in like PowerPoint. So all my logos were based off like anything I could make in PowerPoint, which was really funny. And then,
but it's all for exposure, right?
Yeah. It's literally all built on exposure, and it was very problematic. I think that it would be canceled today, but that was the start. That's why I got into it. I was trying to make a couple $100 as a like 14, 15-year-old on the internet. Nuke CG for comp and VFX hands down. Yeah, I mean, that's like the big boy stuff. I don't know. I'm sure that After Effects is used in films for like patchwork here and there. But I think if you have the pipeline, why would you ever use it? I mean, Jaro, you've worked in feature films and you've used After Effects, I would assume. Or do you use all Nuke in your stuff that you do? I would assume that you use it sometimes. It's got to be like that, like quick, like sprint of like, we just AE or Fusion for me. Yeah, Fusion is the Black Magic, or no? DaVinci is Black Magic.
Yeah, DaVinci.
Fusion is a node compositor, right? But not related to DaVinci.
It is. Yeah, it's still Black Magic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just never use it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to use it because I absolutely hate not having nodes after learning like Houdini. But I mean, it's just like I've sunk now, like 7 years in After Effects knowledge.
Yeah.
That like to relearn all of that in a different thing. I think I would also probably just go with Nuke because I haven't really found many Fusion like job postings.
But you're also really big into scripting and After Effects. I mean, I learned most of my scripts from watching you work because you did all that stuff at YouTube.
Yeah, that was a weird thing. Is that like my first job out of college, I was brought in to like make scripts in After Effects in like Java and then like expression stuff. So I like didn't know it really before then, but after that now, I really like too. I mean, scripts not as much because like it's such a pain to write in After Effects like scripting. But expressions for sure. If I'm like going to be building something that's going to be used a ton. I know that we would do like titles for like award shows or stuff, or like presenters, and it's like, well, we're gonna have like 38 names. We should figure out a script or like an expression release that like makes this not total hell to like make individual ones.
And I'm sure you got more than a week to do.
Yeah, yeah. The weird thing about After Effects scripts is that like it's part JavaScript, but also you have to know After Effects and what After Effects wants. And so there's so many weird like disconnects from JavaScript, which already, if you don't know JavaScript, why would you ever want to learn how to script in JavaScript?
Yeah, I think that was my first thing in high school. It was just it was a very simple C++ Java course that I retained nothing from. And then I got to college. I was like, oh, I don't really want to have to do any of this again. So I just avoided it for a while, and then I got back into it when I started my like full-time job when I got here, because it was more of like trying to be scrappy and how to get things done fast. So I kind of had to learn, just out of fear of my first job and getting fired.
Yeah, man, that was weird. Same thing, because I was hired to do that, and I was like, I know how or like what theoretically this job will require, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, but what if I really don't? That's like every job that I start. I'm like, I always panic that like I literally don't know anything in the field that I work in. But then it's like once you're in it, you're like,
classic imposter syndrome. I get it all the time. It's just like, you just lose it. You just get stage fright. You like go in, you're like, oh, I know nothing, and then you click a couple buttons, and you're like, okay, I'm getting it back.
It's also the thing, they never really tell you what you're going to be working or what you were just like brought on to start doing. You're like, oh, I don't know. From what you said, I think I should be good at this, but I have no idea if this will like hold up to what you're really expecting. And then, I mean, my wife always reminds you, she's like, well, you're only there for like booked for a certain amount of time. If you are not a good fit, they'll just like not book you again.
Yeah,
and like, that is like, there's always like that escape of like, normally the bookings, at least here in New York, like come like in 2-week chunks. So like worst case, you're only on the team for like 2 weeks and they're like, wow, that was not a good fit. You are not booked again. You're like, oh, okay. And I mean, you'll probably know, like I've been on teams where people have like just not been rebooked and everyone's like, yeah, that was not good. But it's not like a bad thing per se. It's just like oh yeah, no, we thought that this would be good and then it wasn't. And then they just like move on and they get someone else in. The worst is when like people overcompensate for the like fake it till you make it, and they like just genuinely do not know any of the stuff they like said they did know, and then you're just like, well, I mean, if you're gonna waste everyone's time, like, okay, no, you're just not gonna be on this job anymore, and we'll get somebody else. And so it's very hard in our field to like, I feel like fake it once like you're asked a very specific task and then you can't do it, or like are like, you know, squirming around why you haven't done it. It's like, well, at the end of the day, somebody's got to do it. So
exactly,
either if it's not going to be you, it's just going to be somebody else. Question for both: what is your favorite rendering style? Stylized, PBR, tune, cell? I go back and forth on this all the time. I feel like, I don't know, I always admire different styles of my own, because I'm like, I seem to make the same sort of style thing every time, not on purpose. And so I like really like applaud people that can like go and like make stuff with like crazy colors, like in any sort of thing. I mean, I'm drawn always to like PBR realistic things, because I'm like, the technical achievement to get there is like so cool, and I like have appreciation for it because I know like all the work that went into it. But like at the same time, like, I mean, like Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, like I would never in a million years, if you like asked me to like come up with a style for like that sort of movie, come up with like what they came up with. So I'm like, I can appreciate that in like the way that I would never ever think of like how to do that, or like what went into like their choices. What about you?
I think mine's a mix between stylized and PBR. I mean, I think I've used the tune shader. I think for me, it's more, it's harder to control and kind of getting, so it's more of like, that's the flavor that you get. So like when you're doing something, you put a tune shader on, you kind of tweak it to a point that you're satisfied with. But at that, I feel like it gets to a certain point where it's still a little bit more out of your hands and becomes the software's creation over yours. as opposed to stylized. That's you. You can control it. You can get everything coming out. PBR, it's like, how does it look in real life?
Right.
Um, so I think Toon there's a space for it. Like I was always impressed by the shaders used in Borderlands because everything
Mm-hmm.
just felt nice and purposeful. But I've never been able to do it with Toon and cell shading. So I've just kind of I dabble, but not enough to
Yeah.
want to keep doing it.
It also has the issue of like, because of the like barrier to like entry for tune shading is so low now, um,
Oh yeah.
that a lot of people just do it really bad. And I think that I'm always
Hmm.
just more impressed when people do it like well. Like
Oh
that's what
yeah.
it's like, just because. But the other thing is like a lot of people don't really see the differentiation between like bad tune shaded and like good tune shaded. Like
Hmm.
like kind of like Spider-Verse is like, to make good tune shading, there's a ton more than just like your shadows are one color and your highlights are the other color. It's like there's
Yeah.
so much work that goes into like making it like really like well art directed, that I think a lot of people don't think about that, and they're just like, oh well, it's like, you just simplize the like simple colors, and then like
Yeah.
it's I have tune shade. It's like, that doesn't look compelling or good really.
Yeah. But that movie was just a masterclass
Right.
in
In
just
everything that it did.
yeah. It was every frame was a still from a comic book. Nothing was skimped. And then even the way that they animated with the frame rates, like um, he was done at a lower frame rate to show
Mm-hmm.
that he wasn't fully formed into
Right.
to his powers, but it was just
It
it was
was
so
really well
good. There's
thought
so
out.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just everything was prescriptively beautifully done.
Yeah. I think that I'm just a fan of anything that like is thought out. Like, I mean, to the side of like even like Marvel movies, like people like to like dunk on them as like, oh, it's just CGI mess. But I'm like, that CGI mess is like also really well thought out. Like they
Yeah, yeah.
executed that very well. Like
Hmm.
I love a talk from like a guy at ILM who's like, here's how he did like Ant-Man destroying like this thing, and like here's all the like technical achievements and stuff we had to go through to get that, as much as like, Klaus, and like here's all the crazy cool stuff that like went into like the classic animation. I think it's weird to like poo poo one away as like, oh,
Hmm.
computer thought of it, and then like I love the
Yeah.
art drawn one where it's like, I mean, both, so a master did something in both, just because one's like more of like a computer science like
Hmm.
mastery is not really anything to like discount as like not thinking of that, or
Yeah.
like the weird like practical effects versus like digital effects. I'm like, if you are doing either one with like crazy cool intention and like pushing boundaries, I think that that's good. It's like the horrible thing where it's like, if you just use CG as like a lazy way of doing it, where like the art director or like the director doesn't know how to use it properly, like the house is just like cramming through stuff to get it out there, like then you get the result of like not thoughtful CG, and it looks bad,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't look like as good as other things. I mean, did you see that that was a cool one, the Mandalorian like spaceship that ILM just put out, where they did like a lot of practical miniatures for like a couple of those shots,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like
And even like the green screen that they do is just it's all
all that, like that is like such cool innovation in like
yeah.
multiple different, like back to the old days of miniatures at ILM, and then like Jon Favreau, who is just like has done no wrong so far in my eyes of like pushing any boundary, like storytelling to like VFX. It's weird that he is
Hmm.
like the guy that is like green lighting all these crazy cool like innovations.
Yeah, it is funny when you're watching stuff with people who aren't in it, like because Allison will say sometimes, "Did you do that? Or you could do it better." It's terrible,
Yeah.
but it is funny. Like it is breaching the gap that people can see what
Hmm.
shit CGI is
Right.
and what's good. I think, but there is. I mean, in Midsummer, there's a scene where I don't want to spoil it, but there's a death scene, and it took me out of it because
Mm.
it happens, and at the end you're like, that was so dumb, that was terribly done, and I couldn't stop laughing, and that was not what they were intending. But it was a movie that just came out. Like I'm a
Right.
huge fan of Ari Aster, but that one scene took me out of it for like a
Hmm.
second or two.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's like you're saying, CJ Rockstar, that CGI is like really good these days with enough man hours and the storyteller is lacking. I think the other thing that's lacking is like when you think that CG is like the what will save something and you didn't plan for it, and then you just like slap it in, and like the house is rushed, like because we know what can be done, and like with enough achievement with these big houses, there's like only a couple explanations for why it is not good. It's like they were rushed, they were underfunded, or they weren't thinking about it, and now it's like trying to shoehorn it into this section, because like when those are not happening, like you get the insane like like invisible VFX, where it's like I was watching like Endgame, and like not at all in my brain did I ever pick up on their suits being totally CGI'd on top of them. Like all those like go back in time suits that they wore in that were like not on there. Yeah. And so when I saw that come up as like in my Twitter feed as like a CG thing, I was like, that's insane. Like that's where I'm like, see, like I can't clock it. Maybe if like I was looking for it, I could, but like if it's invisible, like it is not on like CG's fault that bad CG exists. It's on poor planning and poor use in a lot of other cases.
Well, that's why I'm always like, it is a real, I don't know. I'm always on the fence about it, because there are some times where I would prefer practical. Like, yeah, we're in this field, and you're like, and you want to go for special effects. Like the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it felt real because the entire place was built in a studio. Like they're eating things, and then you have the new one that Tim Burton came out with, and it just sucked because you couldn't picture yourself there because it was a completely generated world. And even Jurassic Park, the original, the dinosaurs were mechanical. Right. The new ones, they're well done, but there's still that like uncanny valley of being taken out of it a little bit, because you know it's not there. They're running away from a green screen. And you know, what's his name? Who played
Chris Pratt?
Gandalf.
Oh, Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen. Yeah, he almost went insane because all of his scenes were like him talking to, you know, Roger Rabbit's tennis ball on a stick the entire time. But I feel like I am always torn between, does this scene warrant practical or digital effects?
Right. I think it's you know, same as the argument of like, what render engine do you use? It's like, well, whatever tool is good for this shot. And like, I think that, I mean, storytelling is reaching like, it's oddly being like the same story being told again, even though CG should be opening it up to like any story being told, which is kind of frustrating, because like with Marvel films, you think they would like, I mean, they have in a lot of cases, but you think they would open it up to like any story, where it really kind of like, if you boil it down, I mean, it is fair criticism that it's just like, you know, we follow this one guy and then there's like this massive CGI battle that like is not very emotive in a lot of cases. You're just like, it's the spectacle of it. And then like they like do some like, you know, predictable, you know, emotion playing, and then like something happens. It's like, whereas like it's more interesting to watch indie films that like have a lot less but could benefit from that amount of like resource in CGI to really push their stories. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all to make money. And I think that that's like the hard part of film, is that like at the end of the day, these things are like commodities to make money. And so like it's kind of just like a nice happenstance that artists like us get to like be involved in, like do some stuff that we like to do, or like that directors get to tell at least a little bit of the story they wanted to tell, while just making this like huge money machine continue to move. Same with any art, really. When you start selling your talents to people, it just is like, you kind of just got to be like, this is a big machine that I'm pushing forward. And that you kind of just have to take it a little less serious, is what I found, in not sacrificing like quality, but just sacrificing like, I really wanted to do it this way, but you know, they want to do it this way. It is their thing, and I'm just facilitating it a lot of the time.
Yeah. Are there opportunities where you kind of, if you finish a project and it's nothing that you imagined, do you ever go back and do kind of like a quasi director's editor's cut? Or do you just let it go?
In a lot of cases, I in my head will be like, I will fix this at one point if I can. Like if I like am involved enough to be able to fix a lot of shots. But at a lot of the points, like I say that, and then I just don't. Like there's just like so many other things like I would like to start from scratch and like do personally that I just like have never really found myself in a position to like go through and like do a director's version. I mean, I've been at studios where like there's been a director's version and then like the client's version, but never really personally. On a couple personal projects, I have gone back because it was just me and like I had the resources. There was a still I did that was called like Obsessed #1, where I had this idea of like, you know, like a UFO chaser who found like some like crazy rock, and it's like you just take it's just like a photo of this scene, and there's like different clues into the story, but there is no story to it. And it's just like a kind of like a technical exercise and like, can I do this, see where I'm at like doing it. And I did it like in like 2014, and then like a year later I was like, I could really revisit this, and like I want to see like the amount of improvement that I can see in this. Like the concept's already there. If I just like use all my new skills to like execute on this, what are the result? And that was really fun because like you can really like kind of, you don't feel like you really progress a lot in cases, but like when you do it like as a side by side of like this concept, just do it again with all the new skills you have. I really found like, oh wow, this like looks way better, and I would have never thought that would be like how much it could look better with all like a year's amount of growth between. But yeah, I've never really done a director. What about you?
I kind of camouflage it as like concept art. Like if you finish something and it's not what you expected, I think it's okay to build like a mood board based on the concept of what you should. And at least then it kind of keeps with like, oh, this is what we kind of had in V1, V2. This is the ending, but I didn't like it, so let's not show this. And then you can display those frames as something intentful. I mean, there are projects where if they're not the way that I like them at the end, I'll just forget about them. And it's just like, well, you know, this one, you know, you do have to pick your battles, but I think that there are some golden nuggets that you can just say, no, I want this to be better now, and I'm going to fix it.
I'm behind on our chat. Seems to be a lot of discussion. One thing is, I wish RenderMan was as fast as Octane Redshift and was cheaper. Me too, because they have such cool talks. But the problem is that like Pixar only uses RenderMan, so like they'll have all these really cool presentations of like, here's how we did stuff in RenderMan, but it's just like I feel like not many places other than them use it.
Yeah, they had I think they had a free or educational license at one point.
It was such a pain to set that up too. I tried to get one and I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, you kind of had to send all this paperwork, and by the time you got it, there wasn't really any documentation. So if you were trying to learn it, the forums were so new because it wasn't really like this thing that anybody used.
Right. And it's like they do crazy cool stuff with it, but it's just not viable.
Oh yeah, it's just like it's like using an in-house renderer for.
Oh right, it is free in Blender. I forgot about that.
I did notice that the question about claws from Jaro.
What is that?
Yes, that was a gorgeous movie.
I fell asleep in that, but that is not Claus's fault. That is my fault. It was very pretty though.
Yeah, it was just. I mean, a little bit was a little bit too outlandish because it was very cartoony. But I am a huge fan of Sergio Pablos, and I think what he did with it was wonderful.
Right.
And I mean, it's like a nice. I'm always into Christmas movies that are not, you know, you could rewatch the Santa Claus and Jingle All the Way as much as you can, but when a good, solid Christmas movie comes out, yeah.
Are you saying that the Santa Claus is not a good, solid Christmas movie? Or are you saying
no,
it
is? It is. It's just it's the one that it like I'll watch it 20 times a season. And I just want a new one.
Right.
Because I
feel
you
want a new staple.
Yeah. I mean, Christmas movies are.
I mean, you know, like Santa Claus, and there's like Die Hard. I mean, there's.
Yeah.
Is that still a debate that people have that is or is not a Christmas movie? I feel like that.
I feel like it's just the consensus is that it is. Like, I've caved with it. If people want to call it a Christmas movie, like, yeah, sure, watch it. Like, if it gives you another reason to watch.
In my head, every Harry Potter film is also a Christmas movie, but it's not. I mean, it isn't. But it has such like Christmas vibes about it that like, it is also like, I mean, it has Christmas scenes, but I feel like that's a debate that people, it would drive the world insane if you'd started labeling Harry Potter films as Christmas movies.
Oh yeah, Happy Christmas.
Charles, got a question for you. If you were to direct a film, would it be 2D or 3D?
I'd love to do a combo, kind of like what's that game by Media Molecule? It's the puppets. But I feel like there's something classic about mixing media, and I think that if I were to do a feature, it would be.
Kloss technically mixed 2D, 3D, didn't they? Like a lot of their lighting passes were a system set up. Like all the animation was done as 2D, and then like they had like some like volumetric stuff that happened in 3D, which was cool in that breakdown.
I was trying to see if I can find that game. It isn't Dreams. I have played Dreams, and Dreams is fantastic.
Is it that one with like curtains and they're like kind of like white puppets?
Yeah, it kind of has that Paper Mario feel to it, and I think there's also that show on Cartoon Network, Gumball or something. It's one that also mixes live action and 2D. I think because my favorite movie of all time is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and just the way that they mix everything together to create something that feels like it is part of the same world is just magic. And I mean, it's like 1980 something, and it's still a litmus test for great technological achievement. Yeah, what year was that? Who Framed?
Simulated then painted over for Klaus. Yeah, that stuff was really cool. I mean, also, Into the Spider-Verse also
1988
had the cool mix of like 3D and then traditional 2D stuff. I've never seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I have never sure.
Oh, just watch it. It's hard to get people to watch that movie because it's like I think there's a stigma because it's such an older film that it's like, all right, it's also animated, it's with live action, but it ages beautifully.
I guess
I'll defend that movie until the end.
Doesn't that have like the oddly like seductive character for a child's film?
Yeah,
that's all I've ever seen. Everyone's like, wait, what?
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's PG.
Right. Oh, weird.
So yeah, when you're watching it growing up, and you're like, "Is this? I don't know how I feel about this," and then you're watching it with your parents, and you feel awkward. But
I guess
it is very. I mean, there are a lot of sexual innuendos. It's one of those like, it's an animated movie for adults and kids. And if you watch as a kid, you pick up on some jokes, and if you're an adult, you pick up on all of them.
I guess along with Jaro's question, what would like be your Everest project that you would want to work on, like your dream thing, personal or like a production that you'd want to be on?
I'd love to kind of keep it personal. I think with those projects, like if I were ever to do something, it would just be me and a couple close CGI friends. And I think because I don't know, something about just having a bigger production, it kind of just muddies it up a little bit.
Right. There's just so many more things you have to think about.
Yeah, and I've done some good stuff with a small team, and I think that the small team is a way to go for something that I totally work with you and Jaro and make something great.
Yeah. And that is like the craziest thing is that like it's very possible. Like if you get people, like a handful of people with like the knowledge base and like willing to go and do like the long hours, like it's just down to hours at that point. Like if you have the knowledge, like you in today's like amount of technology, you just like it's down to like how long you want to spend on it, and you can make a feature film at home if you really want to. It's just like it takes like a lot of time and like prep work. Whereas I feel like when you get in a big production, it like kind of there's still those weird barriers where it's like unions and like all this other stuff and like all the equipment that you have to then rent. That's the other thing like that I love about CG is just that like there is no equipment to rent. I mean, there's like technical equipment to like do the CG, but like there is no like helicopter operator. It's just like put a camera in the sky and then like have it follow this thing. You're like, cool, we have a helicopter shot. It's like that would have been like months of planning if we wanted to shoot this like as actual like footage, which I really think is like the cool I always like forget that part of 3D. And then like when I like, it feels like a kid, like being able to like play with Legos. You're just like, cool, like here's a huge building and now I can like film this where this would take like forever if I wanted to do this outside. It's just like you can make anything, but then that's also the daunting fact of it.
Yeah, and you can knock it down without having to like worry about an investor.
Right.
Just being like, well, what happened? No, I want this scene. Yeah, I don't know. Well, you were working on a short film, roughly.
I've been working on many short films that have been paused in production many times. Yeah, those are all floating around.
But I think that's also the nice thing about having the freedom to just like, yeah, if you want to drop something,
put it on pause.
Yeah.
There's no money; it's all your own, just time that you want to invest in it. My new one right now is a Star Wars. Other than the other Star Wars project that I'm working on.
Oh, really?
So it's a different one, just my own. That is the recreation of the Obi-Wan Darth Maul like final fight that appeared in Star Wars Rebels, which was like a animated TV show. They like which followed Darth Maul like after he died in the prequels, and like gives him a huge big story. And I thought it would be a fun thing to like take a stab at. Like it's a 4-minute chunk of stuff where they duel, and the duel's pretty short, and it would be like a fun thing to get into like character modeling from scratch and like sculpting and like character animation and do all that stuff, which I did a stream like a couple weeks ago of like the first Obi-Wan character stuff. I mean, I'm using have you ever heard of Character Creator and iClone?
No.
They are on my other Star Wars project, one of the artists on there, Olaf, who was on the stream 2 weeks ago, mentioned that we should be looking into that for like our character creation, because it really is a huge kind of like cheat, because you kind of make the character in this program and it's like pre-rigged and like already plays well with their animation software, which is like a huge tool that can take any mocap or like traditional animation and like face animation. So like you kind of jump all those hurdles, and then you can send it to like ZBrush to like sculpt different aspects into it that are like outside of the little sliders you can slide. So that's kind of
Very
like
nice.
Yeah, that's my cheat, because I don't want to ever have to learn how to skin weight or do any of that garbage.
Oh yeah, I think he just used Mixamo when I was starting out.
Right, it's like one step
those.
above that for cinema artists. Yeah, it's just like a dedicated software.
Yeah, I know. I'm so terrible with rigging up, like just painting weights. It just takes me ages.
Yeah, I would Star Wars stuff, they will sue to hell. They will not sue me to hell. They will sue people that do big stuff to hell, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think of this as a big thing. You reached out to them, wanted to ID, call CG Yoda. They said, no, I can't use it. Yeah, this will just be kind of like a video that gets put up online as like a fun short. I am going to avoid like using Star Wars in it. It's just going to be called like The Death of Maul, which will use their characters, but I'm not going to make any money from it. They can't really sue me for anything if it's just not making money. They can claim it on YouTube, I guess, which I've had them claim other stuff before. I put it wasn't Disney, but I put a bunch of lightsabers in Lord of the Rings footage, and that is my most viewed video ever, and all the money is going to whoever owns Lord of the Rings. They've made a bunch of money off that video, which was really sad, because I was like, I feel like that qualifies as like content ID, like the percentage you have to change it. But I think they got away with it because the audio is very important to them. They can claim anything if the audio is unobstructed, which it was. I mean, I even added lightsaber sound effects into the audio, so I thought it would like trick it enough, but
yeah,
they got it, whoever that is.
You just have to do your microphone.
Yeah, for this one at least, I want to try to send it to like a sound effects guy that I know and have him like have a voice actor, because there's only 2 voices, like do them and like really see the process of like recreate. I mean, like the shots are there that I want to follow, and like the pacing of all of that, and like the animation is all similar to that, but I want to at least have like everything recreated, not just like pull their audio and see like what that process is. So it'll be a little chunk of change to get all that stuff squared away. But someone says, "Want to become famous?" Oh, cool.
Got a bunch of people. Yes.
This is very fun. How do I ban people? I'm sure those will go away after a while. Those should go away because I have my friendly little Nightbot, but weird.
Yeah, so how does that Nightbot work? Is it it's kind of just like a moderator for your stream?
Yeah, you link it up to your Twitch account, and then you can tell it like what it wants to allow and not allow. So like it can like block any links from getting posted and tell the person that like you can't post links. It has like a cool command function where you can do like ! like different commands to like send notifications out. It also has like a timer. You'll see that like puts up a message every like 40 minutes in the chat. But yeah, it's nice. Yeah, you can run polls and different stuff and select like random winners from the chat.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Yes, please. I want to be famous.
Yes. Well, CG Rockstar was saying that he might, if there's interest next week, talking about doing some skin weight painting.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would
be totally in
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried a couple times to figure out like even just prepping stuff from like the horrible auto skinning that Mixamo does and like trying to fix it afterwards, and it's just like such a headache. At least in cinema, it's just like I've just kind of come down to like smoothing the weights a bunch and then just being like calling it a day and like painting them out where there's like obvious errors. I just find that it doesn't do well when it's like not a typical shape. Or it's like a hard surface shape. Like robots are like a very big pain because you have to like get rid of all those blends and like all that stuff. Oh, in Maya, I'm sure the principles would carry over to any skin weighting program.
Yeah, so I had a problem with my first short film. It was a robot, and it was just all these, the weights were painted on so that it blended, but it was like at joints that shouldn't be, so I had to go back in, even from Mixamo, and just kind of make sure that everything was like just sectioned off. And it was a school project, so it was like I had to get it fast. So,
yeah,
because back then I was using Maya and V-Ray, and God, a frame back then on like a college computer was like a good 10 minutes, and so I had to get that rendered straight, like way ahead of time.
People forget that, like not too long, like when I started doing 3D and rendering, that like it was literally like blind, like you were blind to what your final frame was because you'd like make like 20 adjustments in materials and like different things and lighting, and then like wait like 2 minutes for like a little, because it was like all just, there was no progressive, it was just like you would wait for like that little section to render and you're like, okay, that doesn't look right, and then you just try to tweak a bunch of stuff. It was just so not interactive that like even I forget sometimes. I'm just like, come on Redshift, speed up, and I'm like, at least I can like look at the render once it's loaded in and like tweak my shaders while it's like still on screen versus waiting 10 minutes to be like, oh no, that's not right, I should switch.
Yeah, I think my least favorite render engine of all time is Maxwell.
I didn't even bother with, I tried Arnold, Octane, Redshift, Cycles, and I think that's it. I mean, then like Physical for a long time in cinema was like all I could use. And U-Render is the worst. It is absolute garbage. I thought it would be a really cool thing, but I mean, at this point, like the updates that they've made in cinemas, like Viewport and all that stuff, essentially is what U-Render is, and it's just like horribly non-intuitive.
Yeah, I've never used that one.
It's
I remember
like
there was one
a real-time engine thing running inside of cinema.
Oh, okay.
Pretending to be a render engine. It is bad.
I remember I tried out Furry Ball at some point.
I remember that.
Like, it was
because it was free, wasn't it? Furry Ball was free.
I thought. Yeah, and it was a GPU render. It was the very first one that I used before Octane, because I don't think Octane at that time when I started using Furry Ball was really a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I started Octane like alpha in 2013. Was like the first time I used it, and it had already been around for a little bit.
Yeah, Yeah, CG Rockstar. I would I would do the same thing. I put Maxwell to render, go to Christmas holiday, come back,
Yeah.
and it was either still rendering or one of the nodes died. And it wasn't like it would continue going. Like if a
Right.
computer died or something happened, which was always, it would never just continue going. It would stop. And I would come back after a weekend. It was like, oh, cool, you got to frame 3. Nice. So
Yeah, I wish that more
I'm sweating.
render engines were as easy to network render as Octane, because I don't like Octane for a lot of different reasons. I mean, I don't like Redshift for a lot of different reasons as well, but Octane really does have really great network rendering. Like when we had our studio and like you could network everyone's like two 2080 Ti's together, it's like whoever needs it at the moment could like pull one of everybody's and just like
Hmm.
blast out a pretty heavy animation pretty fast, which was the downside of being a freelancer. You're back to just your computer and then
Yeah, yeah.
remoting into other machines.
Is there anything that you would have done differently had you known that quarantine would have lasted as long as it has?
Hmm. I don't know. We've always debated like if we knew that it would be this long, would we have like broken our lease and like go like back like to like our home state, which is like Michigan, and just like save a crap ton of money.
Hmm.
And I mean, we've decided like at the end of the day, probably not really have done anything differently. I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've been booked the whole time, so like that would have changed definitely a lot of stuff if I was like not booked and we were here
Yeah.
paying our very expensive New York rent.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I don't think so. I don't think that. What would you have done differently?
I probably would have gotten my workstation a little bit more fixed up initially because I think it was a very gradual
Mm,
process. Like
yeah,
3 months in, I was like, okay, fine, I'll get a new SSD because I'll be
yeah.
here for a bit. And then it was like, all right, let me if I'm gonna try to do some eGPU rendering on my laptop and while my desktop is taken, like I would have
Mm-hmm.
done that. But it's like
Right.
these little like bigger desk. I don't know.
We
I
did
think
get a bigger desk actually. That was one of the
yeah.
things because like I had my desk, but Maddie had my wife had also started working in the same space, so we went and just got two IKEA tables, and then just like because they have the screw-on legs, we just like screwed off the legs in the middle and like put a desk system there, and so
Mhm.
now we have like this like 60-foot long desk
Yeah.
in our room in our office, which is cool.
That's
Um,
what I want to try to do. I think when my roommate moves out next month, I'm going to turn that one, his room into, I'm just going to put a long
mm,
tape desk up
it's
there.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I can work, Allison can work.
I think that I would have had to do those things if I hadn't been remote freelancing for 6 months in 2019, because that's kind of when I like did all those updates. Like I got like a new graphics card and like I figured out my like work from home situation back when
Hmm.
things weren't like out of stock because everyone was trying to figure it out. So like
Hmm.
yeah, going into quarantine I was like, "Oh, okay, it's just what I did all of last year, but now longer and I'm remoting into places that are in New York." Hey, it's Ollie. What's up, Ollie?
Oh, Ollie, there he is. Moved to LA. Miss you guys. Oh, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
curious to see how it is. I
he
mean,
actually.
LA was always like some place that I'd love to move there,
Hmm.
but I do. I need seasons. I need like
Yeah,
a descript fall, a descript winter. Summer needs to be hot as
I have
hell.
to know when I'm gonna be depressed. Like without weather, how would you ever
Yeah,
know?
because like with my sleep schedule and my circadian rhythm, my internal clock is I don't know if you're allowed cursing on this, but
Yeah,
it's fu-
I mean,
it's fucked.
yeah,
My
I think
depression just kicks in whenever it wants.
right. Mine's a nice like I think every 2 months I get a nice like fun like why do I even do this? And then after a couple of months of that, then like I get like a I've actually like tried to track it, and I find that I get like 2 weeks of like the perfect like motivated, can work on anything, want to like crush all these like projects, and
Hmm.
then like 2 weeks after that it like declines, and then like there's a month of like I don't really have anything that I do, followed by a month of depression because I didn't do anything last month, and then like the 2 weeks comes back and it's like I haven't done anything for 2 months, I should really work on some personal stuff, and then it's a fun roller coaster that I've just accepted is how things go for a bit. But I mean, all in all, being stuck inside, haven't gone too insane.
Yeah, I know. I've just like, I mean, I try to get out and I try to do a lot of just walking around the neighborhood and getting some vitamin D in, so that doesn't really tank me. But I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's a switch up because when you're working full time, you walk to the subway, it's filled with people.
Mm-hmm.
You go into the office, filled with people. You go out for lunch. And I think now it's just usually I'm the only person that I see face to face all day.
Yep.
So I don't know, it does kind of silo you a little bit, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there is an opportunity to kind of, get more creative.
Right. Yeah, I think a big saving grace is that we have the doggo, and like
Yeah.
it gives us, like me and my wife, something to talk about all the time, or like something to focus on other than each other, that like keeps us from like going insane that we've been in like the house all day together. It's like we can focus on him, and he's like always down, and he's like had the like living his best life because we're both at home. He's like, I like it, this is the best thing that ever can happen to me, and he's very excited.
Yeah, I know. I feel like now is a perfect time because everybody that I know has gotten a dog.
Oh really?
And I'm also like, did I miss
The memo.
yeah. And also, did I miss my opportunity? But I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it's a perfect time to own a pet, but that's definitely not the cutoff for owning one.
Right. Yeah, we also recently, I mean, at the beginning of this year, we moved into a different apartment, and I think that's also helpful because we now have like a second bedroom that we've turned into the office, and being able to like leave that space and like go in the living room is like a nice break from like in our other place. I had just all my stuff in the living room, and it was just like hard to like work. If she wanted to like watch a movie, I was just like there with headphones on like working, but now we can just like leave the office and go spend time in the living room, which has been helpful
for sure. See that Jaro said, last question for me, do you all ever second guess yourself or have imposter syndrome as a generalist?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, even when you asked me to come on the podcast, I was like, why does he want me?
Right.
And then it's just like, it all sets in because it's just like, because there are so many good people out there, because I mean, because you always have kind of big names on this thing.
I've had one person on this thing. But I mean, it is kind of crazy the amount of like networking that just happens in like the 3D field through like, at least for me, through like Instagram. It's like always very weird to see like the shift of like circles like kind of melding. Like as you go through your career, you're like, oh my goodness, like this person followed me. I remember the biggest one ever was like Andrew Kramer followed me on like Instagram and Twitter, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. If you told me when I like first downloaded like Element 3D that like that guy, or like watched his tutorials from Video Copilot, would like follow you, you'd be like, nah, that's not gonna happen. Those are like the big guys. But like as you go, you just realize that like everyone is very accessible, and I mean that also kind of cures like the imposter syndrome. Like everyone is at different spots, and then like I mean like there are clear like leaders in like the industry, but like at the same point, like you don't have to be those people, and you can just be you. And like I mean, if you have been in this industry and have been hired for any amount of time, I think that like should always like calm you and be like, someone paid me for this at some point. I definitely, and they weren't mad. Like if you've had that, then like you should not feel like an imposter because someone validated you as like a professional. And I feel like that's everyone I think has that. I mean, like I've given 2 talks in my life, and before those I like always have like my biggest like mental breakdown where I'm just like, no one wants to hear this. It's probably all wrong anyways. I shouldn't even be presenting at this thing. And it's just like that always happens, and afterwards you're like, someone got something out of it, so it was like, worth it.
And like when you're handing your files over, you're like, oh, I remember we had a freelancer once at my old place, and like he came in, saw my files. They weren't prepped for anything. They were prepped for efficiency and speed because they had to do like one day. And then he came in and tore it apart. And I was like, well, I'm the only one that works here. Yeah. We called you in last minute. Yeah, of course they're not going to be great, and they're not going to be gorgeous. They're like, I feel like when I'm putting them together, it's a little bit like Rain Man. Yeah. So when someone else opens it up and judges you based on something you're not be able to present, you kind of feel like you drop down a couple pegs. But then you look at everybody else's unfinished like shit files, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, everybody does it.
Yeah, I think that's always the fun like weird validation points where you're like, especially as like a freelancer, when you work in studios with other people and you finally get to like talk to other professionals, you're like, oh, we all do this. Okay, I'm not insane, because you always like feel like you're doing it wrong or like not the right way. But I mean, if it's getting done, then like, and then you're not like screwing over other people down the line, then like that is the right way. You whatever you are doing is right, and there is no like perfect answer for anything. And the people that share their knowledge kind of are the ones that like decide if something is like the right way to do it, and then it gets taught that way to other people. And I thought that's always my thing when I like did tutorials or like streams on here. I was like, ooh, I don't want to be like sharing misinformation, but as long as it's like not horribly wrong, I think that it's like it's good to share that, because if you don't, then like other people will also wonder if like what they're doing is wrong and never share anything.
Right. Because I feel like a lot of times, like, you'll second guess a little bit. Because I know that there sometimes when I'm telling someone how to do something, it's just based on my knowledge for that thing about how to do it fast and just kind of getting it out there. But yes, it most oftentimes is wrong. But it is more of like okay, here's a little cheat. So I think that's when that kind of workflow question and file type come in of like, am I doing this? Am I actually like doing this so wrong? But then you kind of you level yourself by when you open up someone else's files. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, so he does it the same, and if it's consistent, then you're like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, I think what CG Rockstar you're saying is like there is definitely a place for you to know if you need to be following a set structure, like when you're working with teammates, like, and someone else is going to pick it up. You should be naming everything and like putting up things on layers and like color coding and like making it like as least stressful. But I feel like this is more the thing where you're pretty sure you're just going to be working on it, and then they like for some reason give like someone else to come through, and you're just like, oh, I'm embarrassed because this works in my brain. Like a lot of times, like when we were working together, like I was doing like After Effects comps, and I was like in the habit of just building it so like I knew how things works, and then like a couple times I had like give it to you, and then there's like that weird like over the shoulder thing where you're like, okay, well this actually doesn't do what you think it would do, even though it's named that way, and you have to go to this thing. So I mean, I've gotten in better habits.
This file's missing, but you don't need it, so if it comes up, it's fine.
Right.
But then they're like, but that one's missing, you need it. It is. I mean, like when I'm handing off something, if I know that I'm going to be the only person working on this project, client never asked for these files, I don't need to give it to anybody else. Yes, I'm going to work in my own little like personal headspace. Right. And if they need it, then okay, now I can. That's like an added cost. It's at the end of a project. It's something out of scope. Yes, I'm going to spend the time to organize this. But if I'm working with a team, for sure, I'm going to keep my structure as close to perfect and clean as I can. Yeah. But I think because it is working with those small studios and having a small team, there is like the weird like, I don't know if I'm going to have to send this out. I'm just going to like
always err on the side of somebody else doing it in that case. But if it's it's efficiency versus like time. Like if someone's like, you got 20 minutes, like we need this patched. I always like err on the side of like, before I hand this back into like upload on the server, I'm going to like clean it up. But in my like manic like frenzy to make this thing, everything's saying as null 1 2 3 4 5, and I'm just gonna like keep throwing stuff in until I can like get it out, and then I'll like go back through while I still like am in the headspace. But I've also developed my own like working on personal projects like structure, because like CJ Rockstar was saying, like sometimes you'll come back to a file that you made 2 years like after the fact and be like, what is happening here? Like, was I drunk? Like, what happened? So like I need a set structure now that I can be like, okay, I know that all these assets are like in this project's area, things are collected, things are named like the same way. And I mean that updates like every year. I'll like kind of come to a more comfortable version of it, but like as long as there's some idea of like structure, I think that that's like the best. And then even in my like R&D files, I'll still kind of follow the same structure, and it's not too much of like a time suck. But I won't make like spreadsheets and like notes for everything that I ever do.
Yeah. I think I saw a meme was the other day. It was like when you realize that ADSF RJT is already taken. Because I do that sometimes too. I remember in college, all my temp files were named PEP.
Why?
My friend Matt Yorshaw, who's also another motion designer. Um, him and I, we were really obsessed with Tim and Eric.
Mm.
So like all of it was like peppers, shrimp. I had a couple, like if I look at my hard drive from college, there are a couple files that were like pertinent to an actual project. It was called Shrimp One, Shrimp Two, .prog.
I think
And
I
I
was
was
the
like,
same way in college too. Just the least amount you could have a folder structure spread all
yeah,
over my poor 2012 MacBook that I have like copied over onto a hard drive, like that entire machine, and like I'll dig through that to try to find stuff and just like it's all just in my documents, and just a slew of like projects and then like After Effects saves. I'm just like, what happened here? How did I survive college this entire time and not lose a single like project?
yeah, I know. I'm just like, and then I'm linking them all up, and I'm like, I don't. What was I thinking?
No,
And how did I get to this point?
right.
It is fun. I do appreciate there were some times when I would get files from Jaro that he knew that he was sending just right to me,
Mm.
and I would open them up and there were like folders that said like this shit's empty, or like
Just
this,
mental notes for
yeah, fuck
yourself.
this thing right here. Yeah, it was it was always like it was a nice little no. You don't have to be sorry, Jaro. They were they helped me get through my day.
Jaro, you have a tool that like populates an entire like folder structure in naming convention thing for projects, right? I think you sent that to me once, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is very cool, but I am also very lazy and will not use this on a lot of projects. I just have like a template folder structure that like I just copy and like paste for every project that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the agency structure is a thing that I had to get used to. Like everyone is different, and then on top of it, the agency structure can also get then determined by like a client structure. Like I'm working at a place and like the client was like, we actually need our names to like work inside this certain other thing that we're working on. So you have to now name it everything differently. So we had to go back through our entire slew of stuff and like rename all of the important files. And that was a big
Yeah.
bummer. It was not fun, but yeah, clients have their own things, and then like agencies have their own. I pretty much picked mine up after like a couple agencies I worked at. I was like, this does make sense. This is better
Yeah.
than the horrible version that I have where like you kind of build it as the project grows. I was like, might as well just copy a couple folders and populate them versus getting confused every single time you make a new personal project.
Yeah, and you have like I've actually started. I have one universal Premiere file for like all. If I need to take anything and just kind of remix it down like really fast, I'll throw it into one. It's just called remix.proj, and it's the one that I just shove a bunch of shit into, and it's like I'll just figure stuff out really fast.
Yeah,
Because it's like you have so many Premiere folders just for stuff that like you just wanted to throw something in and just get something out real quick.
I just hate so much that Premiere will not let you work in a non-saved format. Like the first pop-up is like, where do you want to put this thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm gonna do anything with what I'm doing right now. Like
I
just
don't
let me
want to commit
work.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's versioning up every time a client change comes in. Yeah, that was a big thing that I had to start learning, was that like version up no matter what, like just because like that someone will come back and want a version that like you may have saved over. So like, yeah, I always err on the side of having a bunch of versions that they can reference by name and like make sure that that was like a stopping point, because I was very bad at that for a long time. And then our directors would be like, oh, I like that thing like a couple things ago you sent me. I'm like, ooh, that, and I have to like dig through autosaves and hope that it was somewhere in there where I like had that version that they liked.
Yeah, I try to save out my files to kind of match the output, so that it is a reference of like I liked V3, then I have a project folder and a file called V3, so I can directly reference that back.
Yeah. Oh wow, we've been going for
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. I think this is the longest interview one that I've had. So anyone in chat have any? Ollie's got something. Anyone got any more questions? Probably wrap it up in a little bit so that these aren't too long. I have gotten people that I did a 3-hour stream and someone's like, this is not sustainable to watch all of these. I was like, that is true. Like in the moment, streams seem to make sense as like people watch them, but I was like, yeah, a watch back of like a 3-hour stream that may not have all the good bits is, and I also don't want to edit a 3-hour stream. But sure. 2.5 makes sense.
Does the chat stay up afterwards?
Chat is in the video. I like have it like pasted behind us a little bit. So yeah, it will be in the video version of this. I don't think the chat on the side stays up after the VOD does. It may, but then on YouTube, I put it in the actual video so that it's there.
Cool. Yeah, because I just don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, it stays up
Jaro,
next for 60 days. What is Jaro saying?
Did you know this dude looks like your Insta? It kind of does.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. Just got to flip the other way. Just got to be mirrored.
Yeah. Because I think he has his... Oh, he's grabbing. If I put a hand in my avatar...
Yeah. Ollie says that he keeps a project structure file zipped on his desktop and he double clicks to duplicate a new one. Well, that just shows that Ollie works on Mac, because that is not what would happen on PC.
Yeah.
That's my biggest gripe. I wish that worked on... I wish zips were better on PC. You could double click and it would like open instead of like extract to this folder. It's just, I don't like that.
Yeah. But that is a good... I think... I forgot who asked the question before. What were we most excited about with like technology here? I think it's the Mac space. I think right now with Octane now being introduced to the Metal infrastructure instead of CUDA, I think that's also like another thing that will get more people back into. Because I mean, at the heart of it, 3D was built on a Mac. Pixar was Apple.
Right.
And I think, it diverted so much because they got rid of their NVIDIA support, but now it's back to Metal and Octane is coming out. Because that was like my biggest gripe with... I was like, no, I'm sticking to PC because I can't deal with a CPU renderer, and no one should. I mean, there's a place for it, but I think when you have so many of these good GPU options, I think that it's so nice now being able to switch the platform up a little bit. If you get tired of Windows, you can hop on a Mac for a bit, and you can have a work stream between Mac OS and iOS.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I was really hoping that Apple would have like finally heard the cry of like, let us have essentially your OS, but like we can plug in big beefy GPUs and have all of our like needs met. But they were just like, what if we didn't do that and instead we made it all still proprietary and it wasn't what we were asking for at all, but we'll call it like a big pro machine that will cost a bunch of money. I was like, oh man, they're just... And
a stand that'll cost $2,000.
Right, and I was just like, this is never going to happen. I do like a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't think I've come across many things where it wasn't also available, like software-wise on Mac. There's a couple like weird niche things that I feel like I would miss from my workflow that are like Windows only, but man, I wish I could go back to Mac and still have insane GPU rendering power like PC. That'd be the best, but it is...
Yeah, and a tabbed Explorer. There's something like just nice about being able to have a Finder window up and have tabs instead of having like 50,000 windows and you're like...
Yeah, just controlling and a horrible myriad of windows.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I was raised on Windows. It was a gateway computer that my dad had that I later inherited a year later that I did Corel Draw on. But I don't know. I started using Mac OS in college, and I just fell in love.
Same.
The UI.
Yeah,
but I don't have a problem going back and forth though.
Not anymore now. It was a little bit of like a, why is everything so gross and awful on Windows? When I first switched, I was like, why can't I spacebar and have an image pop up? And someone's like, well, you can. You just have to download like 3 other things, and then it will only work half the time and crash your machine a couple times. And you're like, yeah, awesome. I love this whole ecosystem that I'm working in.
Yeah, and all your NTFS hard drives no longer work.
Right. I think the biggest... I know a couple people have made like, hey, are you coming from Mac? Like, here's all the like things you can do to make sure that it's like not as gross as Windows is by default. And like the biggest one that you had was like the Finder, not Finder, what's it called?
Everything?
Search everything, yeah. That really actually helps you search everything.
Yeah, it's like a zero latency, pre-indexed. Like if you guys don't have it, download it. It's called Everything, and the icon is an orange magnifying glass, and you can just find anything fast. You can find everything. You can find everything
that is physically plugged in. It won't search my NAS, which makes me sad because that's where my assets are.
And like web servers and things
Right.
like I'm
Well,
connected
search
to.
servers, but
Yeah.
for
But
everything that's
if it's
locally,
plugged in, yeah, it's just like, and
which also makes me
you
mad
just,
because that means that Windows could implement that as the default, but they've just never updated their search engine through.
yeah,
I don't know why.
I think they even started. I think they were making one for Mac as well. I mean,
Mm.
because there's the
Yeah,
other one
because
that's
Mac is
for Mac.
also bad with that. The
Yeah,
other
it's just
one
something
is
about like
the
pre-existing indexed. iOS is good about finding, but Mac OS is just like you have to wait about a minute for it to like compile everything and then start
mhm.
going into it.
macOS is also very bad at like hidden folders of stuff
Oh yeah, yeah,
because they're
yeah.
trying to make it clean so you don't see all the like gunk that you have to like go into. But like I
Mm.
have battled with memory on my laptop so much where like Windows or like iMovie will save huge gigabyte projects in like a hidden like cache
Oh
somewhere,
yeah.
and I'm just like, are you really gonna make me dig through like all these like again,
Hmm.
and like go through and like delete it? Whereas like on Windows, it's just like I can just like easily be like, where is this, and then just like get rid of it. Like it's all
Yeah,
open. You can just dig right through it.
because I feel like
Um,
that's why I had to get the bigger hard drive for this thing because it
yeah,
is just like
it just like
it's
hides stuff away, and it's
yeah
like all your memory's
half
gone. You don't have any more.
yeah, and half of it is used by stuff that I didn't even know existed.
Or like
Like, oh, okay, my iPhone backup is like 400 gigabytes.
or
How do
clean
I? Yeah, what do I do with this?
or clean UI, and so they just label everything else as other, and then you can't go into other to easily. You can't easily go into other to delete stuff. It'll take up like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
20 gigabytes. You're like, what are you putting in there? It's not for the system. It's not for me. Whoa, who is that for?
Yeah, who is this for?
I don't I don't want the other. What's
It's
that?
my machine.
There's the other huge Windows nice to have is that like file size little
Yeah,
widget
yeah.
thing. I forget what it's actually called, but it helps like have
Are you talking about the one for Windows or the one for?
Windows. The one that like next to any Explorer tab will like open another little window that tells you like you can sift through which
Yeah,
files are like big and not, and it's like immediate as soon as you open it.
I use that a lot, and then there was one update for Windows that broke it, and I uninstalled it and never got it back. And I had been using Space Sniffer in the
Hmm.
meantime, mostly because their icon is the Banjo-Kazooie Jiggy, and that's enough for me. I think that's the one, Space Sniffer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because
Um,
that's always my biggest thing. It's like I just want to be like, where can I get rid of caches? And it's like very easy to like, because the biggest thing that like I forget about is like Redshift caches textures, which like makes it seem really fast if you're doing a scene over and over and like none of your
oh
assets
yeah.
are changing, but like it will secretly store it all. And then you'll be like, I have a 40 gigabyte texture cache of like products I have never opened for like a couple months, and I'll just go through delete that. And then the other one is like
Yeah.
my Cinema 4D autosave folder. I like clear almost daily because those get big.
And the After Effects cache, all
Yeah,
the media.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think that we can wrap it up there. 2.5
Yeah.
is good. I think this was cool. This was helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking me to get on this thing.
Yeah, this has been fun. These are always fun because there's not like much of a directive, and it's like very
Hmm.
loose, and I don't really have to like prep anything to like
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
on. And it's a nice little, and it's not like a podcast, which I feel like is like harder to keep conversations going if you don't have like notes, because there's like chat
Hmm.
now and people can like interact with it. But thanks for everyone that stopped by. Try to be doing more of these every weekend, and maybe starting to do a midweek like more art-based one, like I was doing before. But thank you everyone that's stopping by, and I'll see you next time. See ya.
Thanks, guys.